Yanran, we are going. Fang Xianggu said when he saw this. Zheng Yanran nodded her head, yet she walked to Wu Xiao's front, hanging an engrossed smile. Has elder sister Xiao signed a contract? Do you feel your servant would sign a contract? Wu Xiao asked in return. Zheng Yanran glanced at Su Xing, as if she was pondering the relationship of Wu Xiao becoming the Purple Thunder Monster's wife. Zheng Yanran was not overly puzzled like the other cultivators. She was intelligent, instantly mentioning by name. According to the relationship between elder sister Xiao and Lin Chong, it appears that elder sister Xiao wishes to make elder brother Su Xing prove something that you would come to the Vermilion Bird territory using the guise of a married couple? Wu Xiao's eyes stared. Su Xing's brows rose. This Zheng Yanran actually was bright of mind, having guessed just about right. Seeing that Zheng Yanran's saber technique was superb, that move just now was a saber technique swift to the extreme that Su Xing only felt his eyes were dazzled. If it was himself, he feared he would suffer great misfortune. When he confronted the fiery-eyed Swanenai, Su Xing had a bit of luck contending against a star general, but seeing that Zheng Yanran had only just used that one move, his heart was inwardly on guard, not daring to be careless. The fair-skinned gentleman in the original 108 was of the category whose martial force could be neglected, but it seemed she was abnormally powerful this star duel. Not only was her star weapon 3-star, her realm was also approaching 10,000 techniques. As far as rankings for the earthly stars ranked 70 and above, they could count as commendable. Su Xing thought so as well, for legend said that although each generation of star duels had their own foundations, the star maidens of each generation's star duels were all the same in possessing different talents. An unknown earthly star with preeminent martial force appearing in the 108 was not impossible. If this was all according to rankings, then from a martial force perspective, these star duels completely were under the rule of a few people. Seeing Zheng Yanran's every movement was absent-minded, every word and action actually caused some pressure. Evidently, she was very self-confident. Brother Fang, just how did little sister Yanran become your cousin? Taking advantage of the time the two were faced off, Su Xing then curiously asked Fang Xianggu. It is a long story. Fang Xianggu's handsome face showed slight difficulty. Su Xing clicked his tongue. This guy showed a sad appearance that perhaps would throw a multitude of young women into a frenzy. He was originally so handsome, and unexpectedly even contracting the fair-skinned gentleman that could make 1 foot appearance become even more handsome. This honestly was heaven's favor. Only after hearing Fang Xianggu's story did Su Xing know that Zheng Yanran turned out to be a distant relative's niece that followed along Fang Xianggu's older brother, Fang Xinsan. As for the specific reason, that was unknown. However, Fang Xianggu's older brother Fang Xinsan was a formidable and distinguished sword cultivator. His sword techniques were extremely superb, enough that he could contend against a star general. He handed Zheng Yanran over to Fang Xianggu without saying anything, only that he needed to learn through experience and wanted him to look after Zheng Yanran. It was actually this simple. Afterwards, Zheng Yanran wished to go to the Vermilion Bird territory, and Fang Xianggu followed along. During that time with the Devil Mask clan, Fang Xianggu indeed absolutely did not expect this seemingly frail girl would be a legendary star general, besides being one with frightening martial force. I think elder brother gave her to your servant to look after probably because he wanted to let Yanran see whether or not your servant could become her master? Fang Xianggu bitterly smiled. Oh. Su Xing did not feel this was odd at all. According to Fang Xianggu's words, his older brother Fang Xinsan should have been a sword cultivator for a very long time, but it was unknown how his martial force was. Seeing Zheng Yanran dispose of things so rapidly, he wondered whether or not she had received Fang Xinsan's instruction to be this outstanding. If this was the case, he really could not have contempt for them. Then do you plan to participate in the star duels? I am somewhat thinking of giving up. Fang Xianggu looked at Su Xing and forced a smile. He actually was not a person without courage. Liangshan continent's star duels were famous and brilliant legends. Even if they were absolutely deadly, they were still the lifelong dreams of cultivators. Originally, Fang Xianggu had wanted to have great success, but seeing Su Xing's incredible abilities that he would dare stand off against two supercluster ancestors, Feng Xianggu then realized the gap between them. Only this level of courage could count as a genuine Star Masters, and he completely was inadequate. Su Xing was somewhat embarrassed. He felt that he himself was purely an exceedingly cheat existence. Of course, these sorts of words could not be said, however, he did not want to become enemies with Feng Xianggu. At the same time, other than he, Zhao Hanyan and Gong Kaiwei were people he also very much did not want to become enemies. Hearing Feng Xianggu's words, it was only then he profoundly understood that if he participated in the star duels, this cruelty was inevitable and incapable of being averted. Brother Su Xing, can this Feng be so bold as to ask a question? Feng Xianggu looked at Su Xing with uncertainty, very complex. Naturally, he did not know Su Xing's thinking at this moment. There was a question that had always been stifled in the pit of Feng Xianggu's stomach somewhat uncomfortably. What question? Su Xing smiled. That majestic star panther head Lin Chong, did brother Su Xing actually contract her? Feng Xianggu curiously asked. Looking again at the cool and elegant Wu Xiao, his expression had a sort of completely puzzled look. She has some matters to attend to. As for Wu Xiao, she indeed is your servant's waifu. 2. You also know that she and Lin Chong have a pretty good relationship. Su Xing laughed. Feng Xianggu's pupils stared at the boss, and then he made a thumbs up. From start to finish, he had evolved worship from the bottom of his heart. Two legends of Liangshan continent's 1,000 years unexpectedly both are brother Su Xing's women. Brother Su Xing truly is a god. At this time, Jing Yanran and Wu Xiao that had been standing opposite of each other finally had a result. The result did not go beyond Su Xing's expectations. What? Yanran must not. You want to have a star duel with Wu Song? Feng Xianggu was scared pale. That was but the overlord of the previous generation, and right now, she also had a star beast beside her. Wu Xiao stroked the white and black unicorn tiger, her eyes extremely indifferent. Su Xing walked over and asked, Waifu, do you truly want to fight with her? Wu Xiao was calm and easy. The corner of her mouth wore a slight curve, and this sort of curve brimmed with a challenging nature. Very rarely is there a completely uncharacteristic star general. Did you see just now? This different star fair-skinned gentleman Zheng Yanran's martial force is not bad, brimming over with talent. There are only a few altogether in the 108 sisters. Since she wants to star duel, your servant naturally shall accompany her to the end. Wu Xiao harumphed. Su Xing could discern Zheng Yanran's disposition. Her appearance was frivolous, but inside her bones actually was a type of innate arrogance. By means of her methods out of the norms for earthly stars, wishing to challenge Wu Xiao was within reason. It was just that looking at things this way, Zheng Yanran absolutely was not able to handle the current Wu Xiao. The fair-skinned gentleman Zheng Yanran's sole advantage perhaps was that dark rank saber technique. Each rank of Star General's battle techniques were boundlessly mighty. At the Earth rank, they could contend against a supervoid cultivator, and at the Heaven rank, even transforming stars of annihilation needed to be somewhat afraid of the consequences. By means of Zheng Yanran's 3-star destined weapon, along with that excellent martial force, if paired with her dark rank saber technique, this truly made Su Xing somewhat worried. Earthly stars' star magics were but capable of consecutive usage. Waifu, is this fine? She has the dark rank saber technique. Do you want me to help you? Su Xing asked. What? Is that person not your friend? Wu Xiao thoughtfully smiled. Su Xing laughed out loud. I did not say we need to kill him, however, waifu is the most important. Do not speak pleasant words, your servant will not fall for them. Wu Xiao waved her hand and walked directly to the center of the canyon. Feng Xianggu was fruitless in dissuading her and could only step back. The two might as well have reached the limit with this star duel. Purely probing her, Wu Xiao actually disdained to truly kill her. However, it was always unavoidable that elder sisters sometimes needed to teach bold little sisters a lesson. Elder sister Xiao, let me win. Zheng Yanran covered her mouth and laughed. Your servant shall give you a hard-to-forget lesson. Wu Xiao calmly said, "Use every trick you have." Little sister is indeed dreaming, thinking she can defeat the previous overlord, Wu Song. Zheng Yanran's eyes instantly turned cold. That moment was similar to a demon king possession. The golden cup chrysanthemum dress moved on its own without wind, and Zheng Yanran flashed by. The first slash was just like a ray of light. While the fog had not receded, a cold net tore it open. It bore all of the best qualities of Zheng Yanran's fighting prowess, lacking any holes and of the highest quality. The first slash let Su Xing know this girl indeed was not an ordinary earthly star martial general. The concentrated atmosphere was stirred up by the ripping cold light of the saber tip. It released an indistinct whistling sound. The tip that was almost in reach was just like a bloodthirsty fang, like a fracturing sheet of ice. Floating snow fragmented, and this saber was completely chilly to the bone. Astonishingly, it was Zheng Yanran's saber technique. Icebreaker Snow Slicer. Su Xing stared fixedly on the battle between the two. All of the battles between star generals of different styles to Su Xing could provide enormous benefit to learning from experience of the martial force of star generals. He naturally would not miss this great opportunity. In Su Xing's eyes, he saw the flat flames of Wu Xiao's gaze. That simple expression was like a weak and sharp razor, brimming with disdain towards this technique. She lightly raised her hand, and the noble frost demonic lotus was waved to block. The double-headed sword was raised to chest level without any fancy movements. In the next instant, the time between the two was just like it was frozen. Black sword chi then gushed out. Wu Xiao stepped forward, and this step was so practiced. The speed was even faster. Zheng Yanran's pupils shrunk. Icebreaker Snow Slicer slashed open the black sword chi, yet it was incapable of obstructing Wu Xiao's swift and severe pace. The pilgrim already flew forward, one palm falling and striking Zheng Yanran's shoulder. The girl slid backwards, yet she still maintained her impregnable defensive stance. She appeared to be very adept, and she carried slight approval on the corner of her mouth. Not bad. Yanran had even thought this slash could bring elder sister trouble. Is that so? Wu Xiao indifferently said. She flung her arm, suddenly shooting over with her sword. Right now was her time to counterattack. Elder sister will not use her yellow rank sword technique? That certainly is somewhat dangerous. Zheng Yanran's brows rose, sneering very coldly. In the next instant, accompanied with a slashing motion, Wu Xiao's afterimage emerged, real and fake indistinguishable. The shadow of a hurricane reaching several hundred meters wide violently shot out from the sword tip. It directly pounced towards the fair-skinned gentleman Zheng Yanran. Even if it was a pure attack, this sword chi's imposing air was not inferior to her yellow rank sword technique. Zheng Yanran hastily withdrew a step, raising her sword to block. The black sword chi seemed to press down on Zheng Yanran from every direction. In that instant, the girl's defenses nearly were collapsed. The fair-skinned gentleman showed an astounded expression, and her straight saber cut down the sword chi. The power directly sent her flying. The jade dragon Misfortune Snow released a whistling dragon cry that was almost cut short. Wu Xiao did not pursue an attack, standing proudly upright. Zheng Yanran's smile was somewhat unresigned. This was a heavenly star martial general's slash. So awesome! Su Xing also slightly exclaimed. Wu Xiao's full power slash did not use any styles at all, but this slash was completely more imposing than Zheng Yanran's yellow rank saber technique Icebreaker Snow Slicer. This was the strength of a super powerful heavenly star martial general. That really was not innate talent but could fill in the gaps of her weaknesses. Su Xing seemed to slightly understand why Zheng Yanran was determined to star duel with Wu Xiao. Was this not a good opportunity to see clearly the differences in her own strength? Zheng Yanran's smile completely stiffened, her gaze fully grave. Jade Dragon Misfortune Snow glinted with a luster. Let little sister properly experience what power the previous Overlord Star General has. Elder sister has so far, but let little sister feel merely so? Jade Dragon Misfortune Snow repeatedly launched an offensive, stiflingly suppressing Wu Xiao. Wu Xiao's ice-cold shadow seemed to rip apart space. In the next instant, that noble frost demonic lotus had already stopped the attack path of Jade Dragon Misfortune Snow. Horizontal cuts, sudden thrusts, slashing attacks, Wu Xiao easily turned the tables. Zheng Yanran gasped, stepping repeatedly backwards. Her excellent judgment and skill immediately made the different star who seized the initiative defenseless. The noble frost demonic lotus slashed down with the speed of a flash, a butterfly flitting through the flowers. Zheng Yanran also was very incredible. Under Wu Xiao's forcefulness, she did her utmost to defend, both sides wandering over the entire canyon of blood. From time to time, the atmosphere was carried along by the sharp sword and saber. Then, it immediately produced a bleak and miserable ripping sound. The surrounding red miasma was pressed open by the unstoppable force. A biting cold light and a figure carrying afterimages brought on an overwhelming dominance. The Zheng Yanran whose body was at the center of the shadow was just like she was going against a mountain-like pressure. A point of cold light suddenly streaked before her eyes, and there was a crisp sound. Finally, Wu Xiao halted her attack. She still had an easygoing manner, as if she were reviewing. Wu Xiao chuckled, with the meaning of having some newfound respect for the different star. Can your servant ask you a question? Your saber technique actually has somewhat of a shadow of a sword cultivator. Could it be you have a master? Master? Zheng Yanran laughed aloud. Her gaze was derisive. Just who in this world can be the master of a star general? Wu Xiao slightly shook her head. As far as earthly stars were concerned, the things the little sisters needed to learn honestly were too many. Little sister's dark rank saber technique still has not been used. If I accidentally kill elder sister, you must not blame little sister. Zheng Yanran licked her lips. Dark rank saber technique, your servant is also very curious. Wu Xiao did not have contempt at all. She raised her sword, suddenly saying, however, elder sister will give you a lesson. Before her sentence was finished, the attack was launched. A clump of ice-cold light enveloped Zheng Yanran. Wu Xiao's sword tip was already pointed directly at the target, and in the middle of the sharp noise of the sword tip cutting the air, a demon appeared. Falling directly head-on. Everything in the surroundings instantly seemed to freeze with a crackle. Zheng Yanran had not yet come to her senses. In the previous instant, she still was brandishing her straight saber with metallic stiffness. The air was not circulating, energy had ceased transmitting, and the cold and detached sword light of harm star Wu Xiao appearing to be like a specter thus arrived before Zheng Yanran. The bloody Centipede Valley's wind had seemingly disappeared. Wu Xiao's high-speed strike seemingly made time stop. Harm star Pilgrim Wusong. This slash was exceptionally terrifying. Time and space both seemed to freeze, and Zheng Yanran felt unable to throw it off and was completely defenseless. This type of most direct top-notch battle that star generals experienced probably was like this, right? Zheng Yanran suddenly liked this sort of feeling very much. In the instant she saw the truth, Wu Xiao already did not give her the slightest margin for reflection. In the eternity of this instance, Zheng Yanran also discovered she herself basically did not have any capability to evade. The elder sister in front of her, the harm star, did not give her any chances. The cold light of frost and snow and lacquered black cut out a frightening mark in the air at extremely high speed, passing by Zheng Yanran's body like a tornado. It was only an instant, but Zheng Yanran's invulnerable defenses had been torn in half by the sharp line of light brought by the sword tip. Zheng Yanran's expression focused, her soft throat producing a scream. Her body flew out and was heavily thrown down. Do not speak nonsense. While you are still alive, use your special skill. Wu Xiao sneered. The way of the hegemon was biting cold. Astonishingly, it was the harm star's yellow rank style. Tenli demonic lotus dragon slaying. Yanran. Fang Exingu screamed. Go away. Zheng Yanran coldly shouted, getting up with difficulty. Wu Xiao's brows rose as if she was somewhat surprised. A wound deep enough to show bone extended from Zheng Yanran's shoulder blade to her waist. Because contracted star generals possessed immortality and indestructible bodies, according to normal times, Wu Xiao's slash would have already cleaved her in two. However, the fair-skinned gentleman unexpectedly forcing herself back up and not entering the star nest still made Wu Xiao and Su Xing completely surprised. "Do you still wish to fight?" Wu Xiao flatly asked. "This lesson of elder sisters, little sister has noted." Zheng Yanran panted, "But little sister also wants to make elder sister remember this slash of Yanran's?" Her hand grasped the saber hilt, already slightly trembling. It seemed as if she was barely holding on, but Zheng Yanran was very stubborn, abnormally resolute. Her legs widened their stance, surprisingly stirring up the fog with her long saber without the slightest trace of killing intent. Her whole body seemed to fuse with the saber, emitting a sharply imposing aura. Wu Xiao wore an expression of praise. For the fair-skinned gentleman to be able to have this sort of imposing air meant she definitely could someday compete with a heavenly star. Such a little sister appearing among the earthly stars, Wu Xiao was very interested to what level she could reach. Wu Xiao calmly walked towards her, the noble frost demonic lotus slightly revolving. Just when Wu Xiao stepped into her range, Zheng Yanran's eyes moved and her wrist thrust out. Cling-clang, the saber edge unsheathed. A cold light swept across 100 chi, and the valley split open with a trail of ice-cold light, swift to the extreme. It was astonishingly dark rank saber technique. Saber draw water cutter. Wu Xiao moved at the same time. Fast, even faster. Her figure became a phantom. The resounding saber edge had yet to return when it was seemingly blocked by Wu Xiao. Zheng Yanran once again made a move. The saber went out, then came back. The afterimage was stirred to pieces, but Wu Xiao completely vanished from before her. When Zheng Yanran sensed that chilliness behind her, the different star fair-skinned gentleman was already powerless from saber draw water cutter. Her entire body lost its strength, and the noble frost demonic lotus supported her neck. Jade dragon misfortune snow stuck into the ground, and Zheng Yanran half knelt where she was, already gasping for breath. Truly unresigned about this, she softly muttered to herself. Zheng Yanran entered the star nest, and Fang Exangu excessively expressed his thanks as he took his leave. The imminent 10,000-year gu was fine, but he had no interest in Five Poisons Mountain. When he bade farewell to Su Xing, the sort, unswerving determined radiance his expression had made Su Xing feel great admiration. Fang Exangu showed his own determination in fighting for the star duels. Su Xing smiled, for he could tell that Zheng Yanran doing her utmost like this already influenced Fang Exangu, making him heavily shake his confidence. Everyone said star masters concern themselves with the destiny of star generals' lives, but star generals also could influence the lives of their star masters, and who could decide that? In fact, it was not just him, but Su Xing also was moved by Zheng Yanran. A star general viewed as completely lacking martial force being able to make it to this level, Su Xing completely admired her. "You will not kill her? This star master someday will be a strong foe," Wu Xiao pensively said. "Then I shall look forward to the day." Su Xing smiled. Seeing that the snow-white skin of Wu Xiao's arm had a subtle cut extending several chi, it appeared that her final saber draw water cutter still gave Wu Xiao trouble. After all, it was a dark rank saber technique. "You're injured." Su Xing lifted Wu Xiao's arm, taking out medicine and spreading it on the wound. Wu Xiao stared blankly, somewhat having not anticipated this sort of act of Su Xing's. She wanted to shrug off this man, but when she saw Su Xing's serious expression, his gentle movements, she let this man do this for the moment. "Are you always like this?" Wu Xiao faintly asked. "What?" Having learned medical arts from Insuan, receiving the efficacious star's influence, Su Xing's technique was exceptionally tender. "Nothing." Wu Xiao pursed her lips. Waiting until Su Xing finished, she then drew back her arm. "Do not be this troublesome over this tiny wound later. Your servant is accustomed to this. You're my wifey. Caring about this is what I'm supposed to do." Su Xing mocked. Wu Xiao was disinclined to argue needlessly with this man. Su Xing raised his head to gaze at Wu Xiao, saying, "I never thought you would be so good at taking care of your little sisters." How could Wu Xiao not have deliberately evoked Zheng Yanran's potential just now? Otherwise, that final dark rank saber technique saber draw water cutter was a move Wu Xiao simply did not have to go meet. Do not speak nonsense. Now that the two ancestors are dead, what do you plan to do? Wu Xiao turned her head. She suddenly had a sort of very fidgety feeling, and she did not know whether this was the Bloody Canyon's oppressive atmosphere. Wu Xiao very much had the urge to leave the side of this man, for she found that the longer she stayed with him, her heart was increasingly somewhat not too right. Su Xing looked at the other end of the canyon, saying without the slightest hesitation, "Of course it's to continue. However, wifey, you can stay here." If Five Poisons Mountain was considered to be Bloody Centipede Canyon, then the preceding Poison Dragon Swamp, Scorpion Barrenness, and Toad Black River meant they already passed through 4 poisons. Then the final poison was the spider or the gecko. Since they had already reached this stage, Su Xing of course could not possibly shrink back. Moreover, that 10,000-year goo was something Su Xing certainly was very interested in. You feel you truly can fight over the 10,000-year goo with a supervoid cultivator? Perhaps that rock demon king would even appear. Wu Xiao thoughtfully asked. I have the jade pendant with me. If worst comes to worst and something happens, I'll escape. Actually, I worry about you, wifey. If you encounter the supervoid cultivator, escape is not easy for you, right? Su Xing was somewhat anxious. Last time, supercluster late stages already was vivid in his mind. Your servant still does not require you to come worry. If something happens to wifey, I naturally cannot possibly cast you aside. Su Xing shook his head. Wu Xiao's brows rose. She waved her hand, annoyed. Su Xing, do not say these sorts of pleasant words. Your servant will not fall for these. Xiao, I am being very serious. Su Xing's expression was very serious. You stay behind, I can just go by myself. Wu Xiao wrinkled her brow. Your servant is within your gaze. Could it be you are someone greedy for life, afraid of death? 3. She immediately shook her head. Since you want to go, your servant naturally will accompany you to the end. Then I still have another way to get the best of both worlds. If you want to make your servant sign a contract with you, you need not speak rubbish. Wu Xiao disdainfully said, a look that said, I will know what kind of shit you are spouting when your ass sticks out. Su Xing blushed in shame. Wifey, could it be that you truly do not want to be together with me? Even if it isn't for me, it is for being able to fight side by side with Ying. Su Xing still was unwilling to give up. When Wu Xiao heard Su Xing say, fight side by side, she stared blankly. She had to admit that the man before her often would say very pleasant words. You truly are maudlin if you want to go, quickly go. Wu Xiao was annoyed to death. She straddled the white and black unicorn tiger in one step, and the white and black unicorn tiger meekly blinked, as if it was confused. Do not mind this man, let us go. Wu Xiao patted it. The white and black unicorn tiger glanced at Su Xing, cried, and then it immediately flew away like a white arrow. I'm gonna faint, she actually abandoned me. Su Xing was speechless. Tugging on his sleeves, he roused his spirit of loyalty and self-sacrifice. For the sake of happiness between Ying Mei and your servant, sooner or later, Xiao genuinely must become your servant's wifey. 5. Do not hesitate to give it a try. From the horizon came a cold grunt, which left Su Xing hoarse. She heard from this far? Past Bloody Centipede Canyon was a gigantic mountain steaming with black qi. Hundreds upon thousands of caves spread all across the mountain, so tangled and complicated that Su Xing's eyes were dazzled just from looking. Before he came to Five Poisons Mountain, Su Xing had a bit of understanding that Five Poisons Mountain's fifth poison was known as Thousand Spiders Cave. In normal times, he could use a riding sword to fly past, but right now, the Forbid Dance had activated. It was necessary to pass through Thousand Spiders Cave in order to be able to reach the Jade Alum Palace. Su Xing glanced at Wu Xiao, but he did not say much of anything. Wu Xiao sat on the white and black unicorn tiger and entered the Thousand Spiders Cave. The two fully spread their divine intents, very carefully searching for the way out of the cavern. Thousand Spiders Cave produced 5 poison spiders in an abundance, and the cave's interior was spread full of sticky spider webs. These spider webs were incredible, for the incorporeal divine intents were clung onto by them on contact. The dozen golden flying swords revolved around Su Xing's body, spiraling up and down unfixed, grinding all of the countless spiders that pounced from everywhere into pieces. Each became wisps of black qi, and these spiders all were several inches in size, jet black all over, producing hissing sounds. When they spat, a tiny blade of wind shot violently towards Su Xing, but the golden light of all of the flying swords easily blocked it. These 1,000 corpse poison spiders filled the cave. When one fell, another took its place, as if they were endless. Su Xing's brows furrowed, becoming somewhat impatient. Due to the space being too small, Heaven Tearing was completely unable to fully display its might. Su Xing raised one hand, and his cuff shook out a large purple cloud. The purple cloud mixed with thunder and lightning and forged ahead in every direction. This was Su Xing's purple mansion True Star Immortal's thunder. The purple thunder and the 1,000 corpse poison spiders exploded on contact, as if a hurricane had rolled past. The 1,000 corpse spiders immediately fell one after another, and then they were swept clean in the blink of an eye. When Su Xing saw this, he stowed most of the flying swords so as not to waste star energy. Wu Xiao was actually happily relaxed. Circling through unknown numbers of caverns like this, he exterminated countless 1,000 corpse poison spiders and entered a very large cave. This chamber had a thick and dense spider web while the surrounding caverns produced bursts of evil winds. Su Xing's pupils glinted with purple light, and his gaze immediately directly saw through the black wind in every direction, seeing nearby areas very clearly. He could not help but softly exclaim in surprise as he walked in a certain direction. Wu Xiao's brow rose and she walked to his side. "What is the matter?" Su Xing did not reply. He raised his hand, lighting a Taoist light talisman to clearly illuminate the several zhang nearby. The two raised their heads to look, and they could not restrain themselves from drawing in a breath. They saw that on web above them were several dozen densely packed skeletons bound together. These skeletons still wore every sort of robe, but because they lacked flesh, their white bones were entirely visible. From the looks of them, the struggle at death's door they had was seemingly still visible. This place unexpectedly had the skeletons of this many cultivators. Wu Xiao narrowed her eyes, pulling tight her cloak. Could it be that Lady Snake Scorpion is using cultivators to nurture the poison spiders? That shouldn't be. Su Xing at the same time gestured, and purple cloud true star shot forth. These spider webs were abnormally sturdy, and only when Su Xing used several purple cloud true stars did he cut them apart. An astral bag flew to his hand, and seeing the astral bag's items were intact, with more poison ingredients, this seemed to belong to a nebula cultivator. Su Xing guessed that probably some cultivators came to Thousand Spiders Cave to search for some things only to find danger. "Careful, it seems this place has one powerful thing," Su Xing secretly ordered. Wu Xiao twitched her lips, not at all concerned. The cave Su Xing entered was very big, the spider webs linked into one. From time to time, an evil wind and black qi blew out from the surrounding cave entrances, carrying a cold that made his hair stand on end. A moment later, Su Xing saw a skeleton draped in a spider-patterned robe. His heart could not help but laugh. This seemed to be a cultivator that used poison arts, yet he was met with a poisonous death. As before, Su Xing maintained his principle of not being wasteful. He retrieved and untied the skeleton from the spiderweb, rolling up the astral bag on its waist. This seemingly was a galaxy cultivator's bag, for the inside had many poison arts secret texts. "What is this?" Su Xing exclaimed. Wu Xiao lowered her head. Su Xing took out a fragment from within the bag. This fragment was like glass, but it was exceptionally sparkling and pure, as if it was made of ice. When he held it in his hand, this piece of tiny fragment seemingly had something flash into their minds. Wu Xiao's pupils shrunk, clearly showing a shocked expression, but she very quickly recovered her indifferent appearance. Perhaps it is a fragment of some astral treasure. Su Xing could not clearly feel the history of the fragment. Storing it away, he set it aside for little sister Tang to look at. "Who is there?" Wu Xiao suddenly turned around, shouting. She raised her hand, the cold and elegant noble frost demonic lotus appearing in her hand, launching a sword light. With several rumbles, the spider webs flashed with black light. Several jet-black hands strangely appeared, the fingers moving. They flicked several sword lights easily away. Then, the chilly wind blew hard, faintly revealing 4 or 5 shaky figures. Su Xing struck a talisman, and he was frightened. These silhouettes were worn out against the mummies on the spider webs, their white bones lacking flesh, but their bodies donned golden armor, their hands clutching spears and sabers. Evil chi emanated all over from head to foot, and they seemed to be somewhat powerful. How did these mummies come to life? Su Xing did not understand. It is a deception, Wu Xiao sneered. She stepped and flew out, the white and black unicorn beside her simultaneously rushing forward. The skeletons abruptly took great strides forward. At the same time, they opened their mouths, and a fine thread of ash was spouted out, violently shooting towards Wu, courting death. Wu Xiao's expression sunk, her mouth coldly harumphing. The long sword trembled, and chilly sword light violently shot out from the sword tip in succession. Soon after, she leapt, and that demonically elegant noble frost demonic lotus sword slashed empty space, an ice-cold sword chi mercilessly slashing. From Wu Xiao's perspective, these skeletons probably were monsters born of accumulated yin chi that simply were incapable of sustaining a single blow. And the result was that a shocking scene appeared. Several mummies shakily met Wu Xiao's attack. Their steps were messy, as if they were intoxicated drunkards, but the black chi accumulated from head to foot unexpectedly blocked Wu Xiao's sword chi. After a puff, several black threads suddenly twisted towards Wu Xiao. Like spirit snakes of darkness, soundless, they arrived in front of Wu Xiao in the blink of an eye. Wu Xiao furrowed her brow. Her sword light burned, severing the black threads inch by inch. The white and black unicorn's paw smacked one of the mummies, and that mummy unexpectedly bore the white and black unicorn's slap. The spider webs everywhere abruptly fought against the white and black unicorn's spirit light. Wu Xiao danced light as a lotus, crossing swords with 2 mummies. Their martial arts were not strong, but the black chi on their bodies was strange. Wu Xiao's sword tip stabbed into bone, but these mummies seemingly not dying made Wu Xiao's brows wrinkle. With a rustle, there was a sudden tremble, and several dozen skeletons on the spider webs all came to life, pouncing towards the 3. A purple cloud fiercely whirled. It destroyed these mummies. But instantly, they once again continued to stand, brandishing swords, not feeling fatigue as they came chopping. This is, Wu Xiao's tone sunk. Su Xing came over. These are spider silk puppets, don't waste strength on them. His 10 fingers flicked, and Su Xing brought out heaven tearing. The golden swords became a thread, a dragon cry resounded, and sword light poured down in torrents. Wu Xiao and Su Xing lifted their heads to look, just happening to spot that on the cave's top, there was a massive spider with a queen's visage stuck on the wall in concealment. Its 8 spider legs lightly brandished its woven silk, a spider thread practically invisible to the naked eye linked to all of the skeletons. 1,000 corpse queen spider. 2, Su Xing chuckled. His pores all seemed to have opened. The supreme grade spider queen of 5 poisons mountain spiders, this 5 poisons mountain deserves the name of a 5 poisons precious place, as expected to have even this kind of terrible ancient creature. What are you excited for? Wu Xiao was displeased. This 1,000 corpse queen spider was but an ancient fearsome beast. Handling it absolutely would not be that easy. In this 1,000 spiders cave, perhaps no one could be its enemy. Nothing. Su Xing had just found a 5 poisons banner from the cultivator's astral bags. It happened to be a peak treasure forged using a 5 poisons beast. If it was used for Wu Xinjie and the others, it would actually be a very formidable protective magic weapon. However, this 5 poisons type 1,000 corpse queen spider was the most difficult to find. Thus, he became restless. Wu Xiao did not concern herself with him. Seeing that the white and black unicorn tiger had been ensnared by the 1,000 corpse queen spider's cobwebs, she coldly shouted, instantly attacking. The 1,000 corpse queen spider had a feminine face, yet its head had frightening compound eyes. Its delicate lips parted, and a black wind pounced directly ahead. This evil wind had countless phantoms within, release bursts of hair-raising ghostly weeps. Blowing on her body, Wu Xiao only felt her forelimbs had sunk into a river of death, ice-cold to the extreme. She knew this was a type of fiend magic, so Wu Xiao operated her star energy, promptly retreating. Su Xing struck a hand seal, and the purple cloud true star became a sharp arrow that was fired. The thousand-corpse queen spider opened its mouth, and its 8 legs drummed against stone. Its corpse chi became a whistling evil wind that fought with the purple cloud true star. Then, the corpse chi became a thread that unexpectedly swallowed the purple cloud true star, leaving Su Xing greatly surprised. Only because the 1,000 queen spider swallowed at least 1,000 living souls did it get the name Thousand Corpse. The 1,000 corpse chi it spat was absolutely not inferior in might to the 5 spirits and such abilities practiced by cultivators. In addition, this 1,000 spiders caverns in chi was concentrated while also being the 1,000 corpse queen spider's home field. The in chi it spat seemingly was made from heaven and earth, that Su Xing's purple chi true star was basically incapable of stopping it. Only then did Su Xing feel this was thorny. The 1,000 corpse queen spider at this time was still controlling hundreds of spider silk puppets to attack the two in a wave. At the same time, the 1,000 corpse chi unceasingly covered the cavern to block Su Xing and Wu Xiao's way out. Then it endlessly sprayed even more thousands threads of black spider silk to stick onto the two. Seeing its all kinds of tricks, it was just like it was not inferior to cultivators. Su Xing secretly seized the miraculous Bodhi tree. With one shake, the clear drizzle of blue light covering the sky was like a galaxy pouring in torrents. It swept across the poison chi, and Su Xing's heart inwardly hurt. He did not expect this ancient demonic creature to honestly be this troublesome, having made him eat 1,000 bells immortals do. However, as long as he could receive this 1,000 corpse queen spider's soul, everything would be worth it. Wu Xiao had a complete tacit understanding, stepping forward to slash. The harm star pilgrim was extremely stunning, one slash breaking the spider silk. The 1,000 corpse queen spider then escaped at high speed along the spider webs that were everywhere, dodging out of the way of Wu Xiao's attack. This thing is indeed troublesome. Wu Xiao wrinkled her brow. She suddenly discovered Su Xing was very silent. She turned her head to look and could not help but stare blankly. She saw Su Xing cover his forehead, as if he was caught in a daydream. Not good, the girls are in trouble. What did you say? Wu Xiao stared blankly at Su Xing, somewhat not understanding him. In her experience, Su Xing was unlikely to go so far as to commit such a low-level mistake. The 1,000 corpse queen spider once again opened its mouth, spraying out an inescapable net of complete stickiness. Su Xing all of a sudden returned to his senses, abruptly losing his previous easygoing attitude. His eyes brimmed with detachment and an indescribable ice cold. His hand waved, and the clinging fire star domain sword burst out a heaven-overturning flame, burning down the spider silk while also annihilating every cobweb. The 1,000 corpse queen spider moved rapidly along the wall, several dozen mummies cutting over without fatigue. Swordlight broke. Wu Xiao was resolute. The skeletons and mummies shattered where they were, however, the 1,000 corpse queen spider only shook, and these mummies once again stood up. Wu Xiao was somewhat impatient, but that 1,000 corpse queen spider wandered everywhere in the cavern, spitting spider silk to its front, incapable of attack for a time. Truly troublesome. Wu Xiao's hand clenched the noble frost demonic lotus, the double-headed sword producing a light of deep cold that illuminated the cave. Su Xing motioned for heaven tearing, and the 12 golden swords unceasingly twisted apart the spider webs. The 1,000 corpse queen spider was spouting nets non-stop, layer upon layer of spider silk pressing toward Su Xing in an unending stream. The heaven-tearing golden swords already ripped unknown numbers of layers to pieces, but all along it could only move forward a bit. This 1,000 corpse queen spider was worthy of being called an ancient poison spider, its powers exceptional. If it was not for the heaven-tearing golden swords being a 9th-rank dragon-scale sword, Ordinary flying swords could only be tangled by the spider webs. However, further stalemate was not a solution. Su Xing's mind was somewhat heavy. Gripping the green lotus peak he obtained from Taoist Master Qinglian, he secretly waited for his chance, preparing to smash the spider. It was at this time he suddenly heard a cold snort. A sudden air-breaking sound. A bright, cold light in midair cut open a perfectly straight ray of light. Countless black lotus flowers seemingly had been ripped open. Snow light shot directly towards the thousand-corpse queen spider, severing the spider webs inch by inch. The speed of the simply unstoppable cold light had instantly broke through the layers of spider webs. The thousand-corpse queen spider wailed, and a sharp sword penetrated its mouth and directly pinned it to the wall. Su Xing stared in amazement. Wu Xiao had thrown the noble frost demonic lotus over. "Hurry and go!" Wu Xiao shouted. Su Xing nodded, saying nothing more. Heaven tearing immediately made a dragon cry, whooshing as it slashed. The sword Qi unceasingly twisted the thousand-corpse queen spider. This thousand-corpse queen spider had black Qi protecting its body, and for a time, the golden swords unexpectedly had no way through. Su Xing swallowed 1,000 bells immortals dew, tossing the green lotus peak in his hand. Fortunately, the prehistoric spirit treasure did not require troublesome sacrifices. Refinement was enough to make it usable. The green lotus peak suddenly swelled violently several dozen times, forming a hill of green lotuses that pressed towards the thousand-corpse demon queen spider. The thousand-corpse queen demon spider had been pinned by the noble frost demonic lotus, its 8 legs forcefully moving as it tried to flee. With great difficulty, it dragged out the noble frost demonic lotus. The thousand-corpse queen spider immediately flicked, and it fled to the nearest cave above, thinking of escaping first. Su Xing coldly grinned, striking a hand seal. The green lotus peak immediately escaped to above the thousand-corpse queen spider and heavily crushed downwards. The thousand-corpse demon spider produced spider silk in an all-out effort to stop it. The green lotus rumbled and pressed down upon the thousand-corpse queen spider, immediately destroying its corpse completely, with not even half a breath left. The mummies controlled by the thousand-corpse queen spider lost their threads, completely ruined. The green lotus peak turned small and returned to Su Xing's hand. This prehistoric spirit treasure truly was powerful. It was a pity the magic energy it consumed was not less than what the miraculous Bodhi tree would have taken. A soul flew out, and Su Xing completely did not hesitate to receive it. Having finished this, Su Xing panted, but he did not feel one bit relaxed at all. On the contrary, his expression had an impossible to get rid of graveness that made Wu Xiao completely puzzled. Having interacted so much, even though it was not for long, Wu Xiao quite understood the man in front of her very rarely showed this sort of serious expression, as if something dangerous was disturbing him. Gong Sun Huang sensed the difference in Su Xing, emerging to sit on Su Xing's shoulder, one hand stroking his cheek to give him comfort. Has Ying Mei returned to the star nest? Wu Xiao's tone sunk. She very quickly could think that, given this man's personality, to be able to make him greatly change all of a sudden, perhaps there was only this reason. Su Xing shook his head, deeply inhaling. Let's quickly go to the Jade Alum Palace. Don't delay any more, those people also should have arrived. An ice-cold figure blocked Su Xing's front, and Wu Xiao anxiously said, "Did something happen to Ying Mei? You don't believe in Ying Mei?" Su Xing lightly smiled then, "You just now?" Suwen returned to the star nest. Su Xing helplessly said. Wu Xiao was stunned. Lin Yingmei was left with Suwen and the other girls. The efficacious star returning to the star nest signified something that naturally went without saying. How did this happen? They encountered a star general at Green Corn Mountain, and that star general used Green Corn Mountain's environmental characteristics to become very powerful. Su Xing bitterly smiled. And Suwen had not yet completely knocked out, retaining a bit of clarity to briefly explain the situation clearly to Su Xing originally. Su Xing wanted to return immediately to the abode, however, rushing back was too late. Furthermore, Lin Yingmei, Wu Xinjie and Shi Yuan had not yet returned to the star nest to clearly say they were all right. Su Xing could only believe in them. The top priority was just to immediately finish the matter of the 10,000-year gu. Green Corn Mountain, that place has many metal stone thread bamboo. If it only was a bamboo forest, it would be unlikely for her to go as far as to becoming a threat. Could it be that Star General is? Wu Xiao's brows increasingly tightened. Su Xing shook his head, walking towards the exit of Thousand Spiders' cave without uttering a word. Green Corn Mountain, the bamboo sea everywhere swayed and rustled, rolling up of violently surging billows. The earth-shattering tune neatly played, unstoppable. The world of this range upon range of mountains seemingly had only this will-shaking song. The bamboo song resonated, and the valley echoed, sounding heartbreaking. Several dozen cold bamboo flying swords were brilliant in color, overcoming all obstacles. Their bloodlust under thread bamboo's bizarre song was all the more extreme. The fingers of the woman wearing green clothes delicately dances, and those several dozen flying swords then slashed with an all-important manner. The Cyclops' Jin puppet lifted its enormous fist, booming towards the flying swords, but the peace and happiness bamboo's song resonated to the peak, vaguely launching layers of cobweb-like green light. These green lights trapped this puppet, and the sword threads unceasingly slaughtered this Cyclops' Jin puppet. Although the Cyclops' Jin puppet had already lost its intelligence, that flute sound was like a substance that trapped the Cyclops' Jin, forcing it to be unable to move a single step. The green-clothed girl's flying swords slashed downwards. Countless sword lights shot out. The Cyclops' Jin with its defenses dissolved by the thread bamboo and then attacked by the woman instantly became a pile of scrap. Shi Yuan's puppet banner ripped, and her expression was immediately unsightly. This Green Corn Mountain's myriad peace and happiness bamboo and the opposition's flying swords fused together, combining for a truly unstoppable spirit. Go! The green-clothed girl then conveniently pointed lightly at Shi Yuan. The sword threads covering the sky shot over. Shi Yuan's head incomparably hurt. The flute song blaring in her ears was seemingly deadly, attacking Shi Yuan that she had no strength to fight back. The thief star flea on a drum was trapped by the tune, her star energy resistance also at its limit. Yuaner, force a star release. She heard Wu Xinjie anxiously shout in her ear. The star crest on Shi Yuan's forehead flickered. She grit her teeth, for she nevertheless was unresigned to do so. The bamboo song descended the heavens. The sword threads rose in dance. Shi Yuan retreated several steps in succession, finally powerless to support herself. Her forehead's star crest seemingly shattered, and her figure immediately dissipated under the sword. Star release. The green-clothed woman was very surprised. You have signed a contract? The so-called star release was a sort of forced return to the star nest ability of contracted star generals. Of course, it was only that much better than being destroyed and sent back to the star nest. 2. I cannot understand. The green-clothed girl was completely confused how a contracted star general would be together with 3 other stars. Neither did she think more of it, for she shouted and pointed a finger. The sword array once again danced. May. Wu Xinjie pressed Silver Blade's trigger. Bullets left the barrel, exploding in the sea of bamboo. The explosions considerably weakened the flute noise. Because she was the ranked 3rd heavenly star, Wu Xinjie actually could barely resist, but that devilish sound poured into her mind, currently nibbling slowly away at her star energy. If this continued, she would hit a dead end sooner or later. Lin Yingmei saw that Shi Yuan had already star-released, and her face became ice-cold. Her figure swiftly moved in the bamboo sea. Wu Xinjie activated speed is a crucial asset in war. The majestic star's speed was even faster. The knowledge star? The green-clothed woman threw out an artifact. A silver-colored copper bell swelled in the wind. Dong, as a heavy and muffled bell sound was produced. But in the thread bamboo, it was seemingly a dot amidst the flute sounds. The volume was not loud, but the underside of the bell was directed towards Wu Xinjie. Her mind sunk, and her figure instantly almost fainted. Wu Xinjie staggered backwards, continuously firing bullets. The ice kite Arctic bullets, passed through Silver Blade's speed boost, leaving the barrel at speeds even faster. Cold light swept past, becoming ice birds. That annoying noise was greatly reduced in an instant. The green-clothed girl then pointed, and several dozen green sword chi were unloaded. Passing through the multitude of bamboo forests, the flute sound was like a shadow following her body. The star on Lin Yingmei's forehead resonated. She suddenly surged towards the sky, leaping 1,000 meters. In an instant she had leapt into the skies. The flute sound and the bamboo sea suddenly were left far behind. On a precipice, Lin Yingmei spotted a delicate young girl currently closing her eyes and playing a horizontal flute. She wore a simple and elegant green muslin, wore elaborate jewelry. The wind brushed, showing her graceful figure as her long hair floated. Her forehead twinkled with a green star crest, and this star crest made a steady flow into that concert flute. That flute was forged from jade, a shining jadeite. It was carved with a simple decorative design, and along with the mellow flute sound, countless jade lights passed through the flute's openings and flowed out, spreading across the entire valley. The peace and happiness bamboo amidst the flute sounds swayed and played a lulling tune. Phoenix cry wind compressing flute. It was the ranked 67th bright star iron flute deity Ma Lin. Accept death. Lin Yingmei horizontally held her spear, the blizzard on the spear tip circulating. It slashed downwards towards the Ma Lin whose eyes were closed playing the flute. Ma Lin opened her eyes, her green eyes showing a jade light. The flute sounds abruptly rushed, as if a powerful army of thousands of soldiers was going full speed ahead for the kill in a brimming conflict. This flute sound was just like countless golden spears endlessly attacking Lin Yingmei's whole body. Hey! The Arctic star serpent spear carried a screaming, sudden snow and slashed. The bright star Ma Lin withdrew at a rapid pace, the flute sound uninterrupted. Countless sound waves squeezed Lin Yingmei from every direction. Lin Yingmei was just like a sharp sword stuck straight through the heart, suddenly ripping apart the sound waves wrapping around her. Ma Lin's eyes showed astonishment, only seeing a violent snowstorm directly pounce over. Lin Yingmei revealed herself in that snowstorm, the Arctic star serpent spear releasing an arresting ice cold. The blizzard immediately strengthened, blowing the thick, green cliff into disarray, freezing the thread bamboo's song. Ma Lin produced stifled alarm. The majestic star panther head Lin Chong? Yellow rank spear technique. Long blizzard nights. In front of the Jade Alum Palace. 5 Poisons Mountains front mountain. With sheer cliffs and precipitous rock faces everywhere, similar to a deep well, the middle was a valley with a range 100 li in size. Inside the valley, the black light of a serene magic energy was dazzling, messy yet contained. Inserted into the ground were countless poles of large and small long banners. Demi-soldiers by the hundreds upon thousands clutched banners in their hands that they incessantly waved. These banners depicted poison snakes, poison scorpions, poison toads, poison spiders, poison centipedes and such, each an extremely poisonous figure. All of the demi-soldiers were arranged in concentric rings, forming a mysterious 5 poisons array ring. Under the drilling of several demi-kings, they endlessly operated the 5 Poisons Mountains forbid dance. They heard a bang, and the 5th ring's poison spider banner suddenly disintegrated. Immediately afterwards, the 5 Poisons forbid dance shattered into tiny pieces. The expression of the demi-king Ponzi operating the poison spider banner turned extremely unsightly. Ha, ha, old lady Ponzi, it appears that your 1,000 spiders cave is merely so? An imposing man burst into laughter. Did you not say 1,000 spiders cave had a very frightening 1,000 corpse queen spider? How is it not the least bit useful? Demi-queen Ponzi showed venomous fangs of jade light. From the Jade Alum Palace came a cold shout. The queen has orders. The demi-soldiers are to defend Gecko Cliff, 2, and all demi-kings are to be on call. The remaining people are to maintain the forbiddance. 5 Poisons Mountains toxic gases were thick, and the demi-soldiers were not at all too numerous. Besides the nearly 1,000 demi-soldiers raised for the 5 Poisons Mountain forbid dance great array, there were also the 5 Poisons demi-kings. It was probable that ordinary sex would be inferior to this sort of battle array, but 5 Poisons Mountain was like an approaching great enemy, each one nervous and uneasy. "I will go kill that person," Demi-King Ponzi furiously roared. She abruptly threw out an artifact, and her escape light went far away. On the Jade Alum Palace, Lady Snake Scorpion sighed. Dripping with fragrant sweat, she had not expected that the cultivators from the Azure Dragon territory would be this formidable. Everything of the 5 poisons had broke. Although she had already anticipated this speed still greatly exceeded Lady Snake Scorpion's expectations. If this was the case, they would reach her very soon. At that time, it would be too late. "Little Diao, Little Chan, can you still use your Heaven Earth Dark Yellow skill?" Lady Snake Scorpion asked. "No problem, Mother," the twins replied in unison. "These cultivators are courting death. Just let them die." Little Diao showed an ominous glint. It was not out of the question for even the Heaven Earth Dark Yellow skill to be able to handle Supervoid cultivators. Lady Snake Scorpion nodded, her heart a little bit calmer. "Immediately assign someone to inform the Great King. Zhongqi, we will depend on you for that Envious of the East." Zhongqi expressionlessly nodded. His body shook and flashed, and then he disappeared without a trace. The others are to immediately guard the Jade Alum Palace. "Little Diao, Little Chan, we are going to Gu Hall." Lady Snake Scorpion looked at the mirror in her hand. In the pitch dark, it revealed the savage scene of a massacre. Occasionally, there were light flashes that reflected the hair-raising and disgusting scene within. A gigantic 100-chi-long centipede, 1,000-corpse queen spider, poison pythons, giant ants, strange apes, black beetles, etc. of countless odd insects and monsters each were in mutual slaughter, consuming one another, completely ferocious. The close quarters battle within gradually turned faint, and clearly, the final gook was about to be born. The so-called goo was created by placing countless demon bugs together for mutual massacre, and the final one left became the goo. However, Lady Snake Scorpion's 10,000-year goo was completely different. Starting the moment that the star generals were born, it relied on the powers of poison stars Xie Bao and Xie Jin to envelop and exert every sort of array and materials with 5 poisons mountains geography to make each kind of goo more savage than at any other time. Furthermore, this type of fierce fighting would continuously persist for 10 years, thus it was a 10,000-year goo. 3. The 10,000-year goo reportedly was a unique poison creature, the toxicity of which was enough that even transforming Star of Annihilation level cultivators were incapable of blocking. For this reason did it have such a fierce name. In order to plan and prepare for these matters, Lady Snake and Scorpion had already prepared for a very long time. Naturally, she was unwilling to fail at the very end for lack of effort. Xie Diao and Xie Chan followed behind her, seemingly sensing their mother's grimness. They tightly covered their mouths, not uttering a word. Outside Thousand Spiders Canyon, however exceptionally tranquil, the poison gases had lessened considerably. This place lacked the vicious danger of the 5 poisons to the front. On the contrary, every sort of poison flower and grass grew everywhere. These poison grasses were supreme-grade poison materials that had passed through the nurturing of the 5 poisons. A group of people now currently paced endlessly back and forth on this grassland. Envious of the East coldly looked ahead. The several galaxy stage cultivators that experienced life and death to reach those poison flowers and grasses could not help but be overjoyed at this unexpected good news. Continuously gathering them, they seldom wasted this much energy to come here. Naturally, they would not miss this opportunity. They might as well, since they no longer dared to wish for that 10,000-year goo. When the time came to go to the Jade Alum Palace, looting would not be bad either. These cultivators indeed are naive. Shall we eradicate them right now? Ancestor Longevity showed a thoughtful smile. Envious of the East beside him snorted. Glancing around, he noticed that the cultivators that had passed the 5 poisons unexpectedly numbered more than a dozen. These numbers actually were not few, however. How could these cultivators have ever realized that catastrophe was already imminent? These sect founders that used underhanded means to make these cultivators into scapegoats naturally would not permit them to go out and ruin their reputations. Destroying corpses and erasing traces was a very easy affair. Watch them closely for now. Is there not still that gecko glyph? At that time, it will do to have those demi-kings slaughter them. Envious of the East coldly said, if a cultivator seizes the chance to escape? Ancestor Longevity asked as if he had a deeper meaning. The Xianzhenzi and Queen Lady of Ice beside them also glanced at them. The former was aloof while the latter wrinkled her brows. Doing this is rather too treacherous. The Queen's words are in air. If the Queen does not fear those scattered star cultivators going out and arbitrarily speaking, then the Queen can let them go. Ancestor Longevity laughed. There is a female disciple willing to follow this palace. This palace will not act. Queen Lady of Ice harumphed. Lady Ice, do not speak nonsense. We cannot brave this risk. Envious of the East bluntly said. Queen Lady of Ice's eyes had a trace of dissatisfaction. If this palace had known this beforehand, this palace would not have come. Everyone had better not raise internal strife. Taoist Master Xian promptly walked over to mediate. The top priority is still to go to that 10,000-year gu. 5 Poisons Mountain still has several thousand demi-soldiers and the 5 great demi-kings. That Lady Snake Scorpion also will not be easy to handle. Although we have already passed this 5 poisons, indeed we cannot lower our guard. Envious of the East nodded. We also cannot have contempt for that Rock Demon King. And, as for these scattered star cultivators, worry about them if they can make it past the 10,000-year gu? Envious of the East looked at Queen Lady of Ice. Lady Ice, how about it? Queen Lady of Ice fanned a sleeve, turned and walked towards a female cultivator. Ancestor Longevity specially glanced at that female cultivator. She was merely galaxy early stage, but she had grown to have bright eyes and white teeth and was actually very cute. In the star energy of her whole body, there was the faint appearance of an icy chill. It seemed she cultivated a cold ice secret technique. It was no wonder that Queen Lady of Ice would feel this encounter was fate. Envious of the East did not look further. In his eyes, whatever kindred spirits was a joke. How have the Red Lotus Fairy, Lingbo Fairy, Taoist Master Qinglian and Ancestor Qianli not arrived yet? Envious of the East was annoyed. These words had just fallen. A red silhouette rushed out from the cave, instantly arriving onto the plains. Red muslin covered her body, karma fire was all over her body, and her legs tread on red lotuses. She was the Red Lotus Fairy. Red Lotus Fairy. And the Lingbo Fairy? Xianzhenzi looked behind the Red Lotus Fairy. A moment later, there was only a panicked and uncertain youth, but no one else appeared. That woman died. Red Lotus Fairy expressionlessly replied. The great cultivators showed astonishment. Even the distant Queen Lady of Ice raised her eyebrows and could not help but walk over. The shifting flower sword sex Lingbo Fairy is very familiar with 5 Poisons Mountain and is at supercluster middle stage cultivation. How could she die like this? Ancestor Longevity chuckled. Is this true? Could it be you suspect this immortal killed her? The Red Lotus Fairy scoffed. Just what happened? Envious of the East questioned. The Red Lotus Fairy sneered. We were crossing the Toad Black River. Those cultivators suddenly revolted, and among them was a cultivator that unexpectedly was a star master. The Lingbo Fairy was struck into the Black River and thus died. What, a star master? Everyone was slightly stunned. What star general is that to be unexpectedly capable of confronting you too? Xianzhenzi was endlessly amazed. The Red Lotus Fairy was unconcerned. With a self-mocking tone, if you knew what that star general was, you would not be this amazed. And just what star general was she? 5 Tigers General, Prestige Star Double Clubs Hu Yanzhua. The Red Lotus Fairy coldly spat. The ancestors all slightly drew in a breath. A chill reached from head to foot, and they looked at each other in dismay, frightened. Although they could think that there perhaps would be a star master in existence among the 100 galaxy cultivators that came to the Vermilion Bird territory, they did not anticipate it would be the ranked 8th Prestige Star Double Clubs Hu Yanzhua. This indeed was a fiend star 5 tigers among the star generals, super ferocious, that when the second phase ended, the supercluster cultivators would find her hard to contend against. Red Lotus, is what you said true? Queen Lady of Ice sneered. Of course it is true. Although she is a 5 Tigers general, this immortal's Red Lotus Karma Fire is not that easy to handle. The Red Lotus Fairy had seemingly foresaw they would ask this. Hinting with her eyes, the youth trembling in fear that came with the Red Lotus Fairy walked over. This immortal knew you would believe your servant killed that woman. Ask him, then. In order to show this immortal's innocence, this immortal indeed wasted great time in order to protect him Hiruntu. The Red Lotus Fairy calmly answered. What is your name? Explain what you saw in detail. If you dare hide one word, your servant shall make you terror-stricken. Envious of the East coldly eyed this youth. His cultivation was only galaxy middle stage, presuming he would not have dared to collude with the Red Lotus Fairy under his pressure. The youth was refined, but under the pressuring expressions of the ancestors, he still had been scared pale. His legs trembled, and he promptly said, Your servant is Xie Chang'an, 6, a scattered star cultivator. What Senior Red Lotus Fairy said just now was absolutely true. Afterwards, they were struck by Senior's powers, using the jade pendant to escape. Envious of the East closely stared at this Xie Chang'an, wanting to discern something from his face. The Red Lotus Fairy sneered in annoyance. If you do not believe this immortal, then it will do for this immortal to leave right now. This immortal will leave it to all of you to go for this 10,000-year goo. Envious of the East smiles. There is significant concern. Envious is only thinking of confirming clearly to give the Shifting Flower Sword sect an explanation. If an offense has been committed, then Envious pleads for forgiveness. Envious of the East, whatever you say goes. Who let your cultivation be the highest? The Red Lotus Fairy smiled insincerely. Envious of the East did not mind and looked at Xie Chang'an. The youth's forehead dripped with cold sweat. His fear did not seem to be feigned. Envious of the East smiled and suddenly slapped the youth's head. Xie Chang'an made an incredible scream and collapsed onto the ground, then ceased to breathe. The Red Lotus Fairy was shocked. Envious of the East. What are you doing? The others were also greatly surprised by Envious of the East's abrupt action. The Envious of the East who struck Xie Chang'an dead with a single slap smiled. This is merely a scattered star cultivator. What is the fairy doing getting stirred over this? This immortal arduously protected his life, yet you slapped him dead. Give this immortal an explanation. The Red Lotus Fairy gnashed her teeth. The other ancestors were also dissatisfied. Envious of the East said, Envious also fears he is yet another Star Master. The other galaxy cultivators were already somewhat in a riot. However, they were very quickly calmed by the other ancestors. Envious, your meaning is? Ancestor Longevity narrowed his eyes. To guard against the unexpected. If we were to be suddenly sneak attacked by a Star Master, would everyone here be peaceful? Envious of the East looked around him. Galaxy cultivators able to reach this place all have some talent. Your servant would not be at ease even if he himself died. Killing a cultivator in a single strike without uttering a single word. The ancestors were shocked enough by Envious of the East's cautious attitude that their blood ran cold. It would be better to first put this off until we pass Gecko Cliff. We also require assistance, and it will suffice to keep this in mind. Xianzhenzi shook his head, right now unhappily taking the big step of breaking his vow of no killing. This simply was giving Lady Snake Scorpion a sight to laugh at. It was just that for fear of Envious of the East's cultivation being the highest, he could only conform with the others. Fine then. In the future, do not regret it. The Red Lotus Fairy silently looked at the Xie Chang'an whose breath had stopped. Gazing at Envious of the East, a trace of sinister hatred flashed in her eyes. Suddenly, she looked around and discovered that there were still 2 other ancestors that had not arrived. What about Taoist Master Qing Lian and Ancestor Qianli? How have they still not arrived? No need to wait any further. Perhaps they already met with the same situation that the Red Lotus Fairy did, running into a mishap. Xianzhenzi sighed. What? Could it be there is a Star Master that can handle 2 supercluster old monsters? The Red Lotus Fairy said in disbelief. Even if they were to encounter that legendary purple thunder monster, it cannot be possible that both died? This immortal encountered double clubs Huyanzhua and still repelled her. Does that Taoist master Qing Lian not have a green lotus peak magic weapon also? Regardless of the situation, we already cannot wait any longer. This can wait until after things are finished. Envious of the East waved his hand. Or perhaps they hid themselves in preparation to loot a burning house. Ancestor Longevity laughed aloud. The Red Lotus Fairy kept a lookout on the myriad caverns, suddenly shouting, "Who there is peeping?" Everyone was stunned. Their divine intents swept forth, yet nothing was peculiar at all. "Red Lotus, you are too sensitive," Envious of the East said in annoyance. The Red Lotus Fairy and Taoist Master Qing Lian had a considerably deep friendship. Seeing her this flustered, the ancestors said nothing but smiled with deeper meanings. The Red Lotus Fairy wrinkled her brow. She had indeed sensed the green lotus peak, but it was fleeting. Could it be she truly was mistaken? "No more nonsense, we are leaving." They then swiftly moved towards the faraway cliffs. Not long after, a youth and a cool and elegant woman walked out from the Thousand Spiders cave. "Did you anticipate that Envious of the East would kill you, that you would not go out?" Wu Xiao mockingly asked. Su Xing affirmed, with things very clearly done to this degree, these ancestors would not leave any of the other cultivators alive. "I just didn't think he would be so quick to act, nor do I know why." Su Xing looked at the corpse lying on the grasslands. Due to distance being too far, he could not clearly hear the reason Envious of the East would kill Xie Chang'an. Actually, those ancestors losing the Lingbo Fairy made Su Xing feel contemplative. It seems that having reached this stage, these ancestors have begun to harbor sinister designs. "Then what do you plan to do?" "All roads lead to Rome. The Jade Alum Palace's surroundings are so huge, we shall just enter from the side." "Xiao, do you actually want to go together?" Su Xing still was very anxious. "Could it be that you believe your servant will implicate you?" Wu Xiao sneered. Su Xing shook his head. Since they had already reached this stage, having Wu Xiao stay here was not too possible. Lin Yingmei's side seemingly was still somewhat troublesome, and Su Xing also wanted to settle this 10,000 Yirgu affair with all possible speed. At the moment, he said no more and walked along a different path. Su Xing walked on a very large plain, the vegetation of which appeared black. Originally, he had thought that he could relax a bit after leaving the 5 poisons, but it appeared that was not the case. These black poison grasses hovered above the plains like aquatic plants. If a cultivator stayed for a long time on these plains, his energy would be absorbed by these poison grasses in a steady, unending flow, making cultivators unceasingly use star energy for protection, thus wasting their magic energy. Su Xing thought that what this lady snake scorpion arranged sure enough was watertight. The previous poison dragon swamp, the scorpion barrenness, the toad black river and the centipede canyon and Thousand Spiders cave, also, were 5 poisons of every kind, each consolidated at every step. These made people surprised, and even if they passed the 5 poisons by fluke, this seemingly tranquil poison plain was actually unwittingly absorbing the energy of people, an invisible killer. Just as they were speeding along. Suddenly, the grasslands rustled. "Careful!" A black thread like a clever snake proceeded under the cover of the poison grasses as it suddenly went straight for Su Xing. Su Xing's face sunk, and he coldly snorted, shaking his sleeve. More than 10 purple thunders fiercely shot out from his sleeve in succession. Immediately after, he raised the clinging fire star domain sword. This astral treasure cut empty space, and a scarlet sword chi ferociously slashed. Su Xing discerned that the poison thread in front of him and the 1,000 Corpse Queen Spider's poison thread were very similar. He did not dare neglect it. Using the purple thunder and clinging fire to break it, destroying this spider silk was not a problem at all with the Purple Mansion Immortal's thunder and clinging fire. However, he had not expected that after a puff, puff sound, that black thread would penetrate the Purple Mansion Immortal's thunder as if it was not there. Then, the purple thunder flashed, and the purple thunder's purple clouds instantly were split in 2 by the spider silk. Furthermore, The closely following clinging fire star domain sword that slashed this object was not any stronger than the Purple Mansion Immortal's thunder. It only made the spider silk's toughness show, and then it was similarly cut up. This spider silk practically was a divine weapon. This spider silk that did not stop in the slightest had not yet reached Su Xing. Su Xing was greatly surprised, and flicking 5 fingers, a purple lotus flower was unhurriedly flicked out. Blocking towards the spider silk, it was nearly at the same time that Su Xing moved out his flying sword. The heave-tearing golden swords flashed and directly hacked downwards. The power of 5 spirits perhaps encountering an item of mutual restraint would be easily pierced through, but the heaven-tearing flying sword's attack could cope with it. Su Xing's mind quickly brainstormed. It was like his own, as expected. When heaven-tearing slashed onto the spider silk, it immediately made the spider silk that was flying over stall in place. Su Xing had not yet urged on the flying sword's powers when he heard a cold laugh from an unknown place. The spider silk was briefly indistinct, and it unexpectedly released more than 100 black threads. The 100 strings turned, forming a massive spider web. Then a layer of strange silk appeared on the spider web. The flying sword's light and the serene light touched, unexpectedly entangling the heaven-tearing whose sharpness was matchless. Su Xing coldly chuckled, striking several hand seals. Heaven-tearing's golden light flourished, revolving into a sword array. With a rustle, the spider silk had been ripped open, but Su Xing was shocked to discover a blemish had appeared in heaven-tearing spiritual power. This spiderweb's background was not small, unexpectedly corrupting a sword chant. Su Xing recalled the swords. That the 1,000-corpse queen spider would die at your hands actually is not an injustice. Unexpectedly, you are capable of breaking even your servant's 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web. 2. Each word was somewhat seductive, yet the voice was also full of shock. Su Xing hinted to Wu Xiao with his eyes. The pilgrim understood tacitly and concealed her figure. Playing tricks before your servant. The voice sneered, and spider silk shot out from nowhere, forming a net wall. The spider silk released black chi, leaving Wu Xiao no choice but to halt her advance. An alluringly adorned woman leisurely walked out. What she wore was extremely erotic. Her chest was wrapped only with a tiny red bodice, close to half-naked, and her flower skirt swayed gently. Her fine black hair had a crystal web-shaped adornment, and her eyes were lovely and erotic. In particular were her 10 slender and fine fingers, the black nails of which shot spider silk that she played around with in her palm. Her cultivation was supercluster early stage. A demi-king. Su Xing had heard that the Gecko Cliff past the 5 poisons of 5 Poisons Mountain would be the final barrier to the Jade Alum Palace. Although Gecko Cliff was unlike the previous 5 poisons that were dangerous at every step, one wrong step would be a complete disaster. However, similar dangers were layered. Several thousand demi-soldiers guarded the cliff, and the 5 poisons demi-kings of 5 Poisons Mountain were even more ready for battle. They could not be ignored. However, Su Xing could never have thought that his killing the 1,000-corpse queen spider would alarm Ponzi. This pretty and flirty demi-king Ponzi searched for the presence of the 1,000-corpse queen spider's soul. Ponzi then quickly pursued, having a chance encounter with the Su Xing that wanted to walk an isolated trail. Behind Ponzi were an additional 100 demi-soldiers, each demonic and fiendish. "Little ones, kill this cheating couple," Demi-King Ponzi yelled. So as to avoid the white and black unicorn tiger's tiger growl attracting the others' attention, Wu Xiao had stored the white and black unicorn tiger into her star world. Seeing that this group of demi-soldiers had come to die, she disdainfully raised the double-headed sword to attack. These demi-soldiers hidden deep in Vermilion Bird territory and Demi-King Ponzi did not understand much about the star duels. They did not look at Wu Xiao's noble frost demonic lotus, only taking her to be a martial cultivator. Su Xing at this time also launched an attack, however, the space was only a few zhang. As far as Su Xing was concerned, people that relied only on speed practically could be ignored. It was just that Demi-King Ponzi's speed made him very surprised, unexpectedly not neglecting her in the slightest. A sinister and enchanting laugh. The two entered into battle in an instant. Su Xing immediately sniffed danger, drawing back without stopping at all. He had already retreated far away, and a bucket-like black spider web already shot violently towards the place he was just fighting at. The terrifying power violently crushed the stone and spattered it. A large hole already appeared at that place. In just a short moment of contact, Su Xing had returned without any achievements. Such a quick attack, and the power of that 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web also was abnormally valiant. The Vermilion Bird Territories Demi-King were unlike the Vermilion Bird Territories 3 cultivators, for they had supercluster magic energy but exceedingly few powers. As a result, if similar realms were to fight, the majority of the Azure Dragon Territory cultivators could win with greater probability. However, there were still a few Demi-Kings that possessed powers that were more powerful than cultivators' flying swords and magic weapons. If they were encountered, let alone that their realms were the same as a cultivator's, even those one realm higher would not necessarily be an opponent. All Demi-Kings had their own abilities, and seeing this Demi-King Ponzi, it was very clear hers was a spider silk ability. It was unknown to what stage that 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web had been refined to in her body. The myriad spider silk allowed her to search, and it was several times more powerful than flying swords turned to thread. A single 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web absolutely could make cultivators sink into a place with no reprieve. If she had encountered other cultivators, even if it was an opponent of Ancestor Qianli's level, Pensier had the self-confidence to win, but the person she encountered was Su Xing, a cultivator that although was galaxy early stage nevertheless created many miracles. Of course, apart from him, there was still another even more frightening fighter. Wu Xiao coldly smiled, suddenly rushing over. A spider web opened, and though the harm star stepped within, it was like her shoes tread level ground. Unexpectedly, she was not obstructed in the slightest. How is this possible? Pensier was astonished. The harm star Wusong's innate skill was the Pilgrim's Array. Normal arrays or spider silk basically were incapable of obstructing Wu Xiao. Demi-King Pensi withdrew her fingers, and shouting, her fist swung past Wu Xiao's attack path. A poison chi immediately wound around the silk, and the 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities silk brought a violent wind pressure. With a vague flicker, the poison grasses were disintegrated in an instant, as if a blade had flown in all four directions. A hook formed on Wu Xiao's lips. Ducking under the spider silk, she lowered her body and swooped down, her entire person instantly sticking close to the surface of the earth, as if she was a flying fish skimming the water's surface. Her speed once again increased a level. At the same time, her right hand's noble frost demonic lotus was ready to attack. A swift and severe imposing air pounced towards her directly from the front, and Demi-King Pensi could only feel that the surrounding airflow seemingly turned more formidable than her 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities spider silk. Her body unexpectedly gave rise to a slightly constricted feeling, as if the surrounding space emitted an immense pressure towards her. This made Demi-King Pensi's heart shiver and feel disbelief. This woman was not that simple. Demi-King Pensi flourished her 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web, promptly making a defense. Regardless of what level of power the opponent was, as long as she had the 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web protecting her, that woman presumably could not injure her. However, just at this moment, Wu Xiao's cool and elegant figure already reached her front. The noble frost demonic lotus cut down the 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities silk, and her palm already heavily chopped onto her. Demi-King Pensi's silhouette immediately was launched violently away. Abruptly putting strength to her legs, Wu Xiao's body first ran, the speed unexpectedly extremely quick. With several great strides, she had already crossed over the distance between them. Her body fiercely leaned, her shoulder angled outwards. In that instant, Wu Xiao concentrated all her strength on her body rather than her armament, completely turning herself into a lethal weapon. She carried a severe wind pressure, again mercilessly slamming the place Demi-King Pensi was at. The 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web suddenly spread open, and the spider web rolled towards Wu Xiao layer by layer. 3 bright stars glowed, and the noble frost demonic lotus very easily stabbed directly through. This instant could count as a fact that even those ignorant of the star duels would recognize. To be capable of refining star weapons to manifest stars, and to be able to be this stunning, in all of Liangshan, there was only one type of people that could achieve this. You are a star general. Demi-King Ponzi was dumbstruck. The 100 demi-soldiers on the other side also launched an assault. These 5 poisons demi-troops each had their own innate gifts. Their bodies donned black armor, and they carried tempered arms, wanting to surround Wu Xiao. However, how could Su Xing give them this chance? Suddenly putting strength to his feet, he was like a panther as he instantly leapt into the middle of the demi-soldiers. In the instant that these demi-soldiers reacted, he cut directly through their frail defenses. Afterwards, he suddenly reached out for a demi-soldier and clutched its neck with his right hand. He then ruthlessly flung the demi-soldier away, the immense power throwing that fully 200-kilogram body as it was an artillery shell, flying straight. With a tremendous noise, it slammed into the cliff face, smashing open a deep crater. The other demi-soldiers seemed to not have seen that. All of them launched an attack on Su Xing together. Whether it was using poison or unleashing a goo or even completely charging forward to close the distance, they believed cultivators were all of the same kind. Several demi-soldiers' poison arrows were just like poisonous snakes, their movements fine yet fierce. From time to time, these hidden arrows flew out, but it was very difficult to imagine how their boorish forms could have ever employed such delicate yet also dangerous arrow arts. A dazzling poison light cut open the air with an unending chi sound, demonstrating the extraordinary strength of the demi-soldiers. Su Xing's body was as if it had lost its weight. He floated and moved amongst the 100 demi-soldiers' siege. No matter how tight the assault, he always would find a hole in their attacks and then timely dodge away. That body technique was even faster than the wind. It was just that these demi-soldiers' close-quarters martial arts were not bad either. Although their attacks had many gaps, under mutual coordination, the first indistinct signs of slightly containing Su Xing developed. Su Xing was not in the mood to deal with these demi-soldiers, however, for fear of attracting the attention of Envious of the East and the rest several thousand meters away, he could only suppress his methods as much as possible, his eyes bursting with a cold light. A ringing sound of metallic arms clashing, 5 demi-soldiers mounting a joint attack brandished sharp claws that slammed into each other. Su Xing had already lowered his body and stuck close to the ground the instant they attacked. Flipping his wrist, one heaven tearing violently swept in a large circle through the surroundings like a hurricane. Its wild brute power conquered every obstacle, and all of the surrounding demi-soldiers had great difficulty escaping this disaster. Suddenly, metal clanged against each other. His short hair flying, Su Xing stabbed his hands and a foot in different directions, right away intercepting the fierce attack of 3 demi-soldiers. This time, Su Xing secretly used the power of the Purple Mansion Immortal's thunder on his palms. The purple thunder being restrained produced a muffled sound that filled Su Xing's attack. He had not expected that by keeping purple thunder in his hand, the attack would actually be unusually good. After several demi-soldiers collapsed, the other fighters launched even fiercer close combat attacks. Before long, the more than half of the 100 demi-soldiers had met a violent end. Su Xing at this time saw that Demi-King Ponzi was already being forced by Wu Xiao to retreat step by step. She suddenly hissed sharply, her arms frantically waving, and her whole body emitted black qi. The black qi was in bursts, surging evil clouds. Demi-King Ponzi opened her mouth, spitting out 10,000 strands of spider silk. This spider silk shot over, filling the sky, like fireworks blossoming and covering everything in a range of 100 meters. It made people basically no chance of dodging. Clearly, this Demi-King Ponzi was already recklessly using her most powerful ability. Su Xing pinched together a hand seal. Purple cloud true star gushed forth and warded off these threads. How could Demi-King Ponzi ever have foresaw a galaxy-stage cultivator like Su Xing would have powers that could contend against hers? While she was astonished, Wu Xiao's figure escaped, easily breaking free of the layers of spider web and slashing downwards. Demi-King Ponzi opened her mouth, once again spitting a clump of spider silk. Wu Xiao's figure slightly leaned, one leg sweeping over. She kicked Demi-King Ponzi's stomach, which sent her flying. Demi-King Ponzi had not returned to her senses when she suddenly saw a figure that seemingly waited for a long time appear at a place behind her. By the time Demi-King Ponzi noticed, she saw Su Xing's cold smile. A token flashed in her eyes. Demi-King Ponzi's heart shouted, "This is bad." Her 10 fingers waved to control some spider silk, but Su Xing was faster than her by a step. The god's sealing plate struck her forehead with a bang, and the woman screamed, falling where she was. "Receive!" Su Xing said no more, sending his divine intent into the god's sealing plate in his hand. The god's sealing plate was an immemorial secret treasure of the Vermilion Bird territory specially used to trap a cultivator's mind. There were pros and cons to trapping 2 minds, however. The user necessarily had to have divine intent stronger than that of the one being trapped. Otherwise, the one that was trapped would easily break free and regain control, turning the tables and absorbing the caster's divine intent for a complete disaster. The current Su Xing had received 6-star generals, and his divine intent could be said to have surpassed all others before and since. Trapping a supercluster early-stage cultivator still was not done easily. When Demi-King Ponzi saw the god's sealing plate had sealed a piece of her mind from her Tianling point into the plate, she immediately gnashed her teeth. She circulated her divine intent to swallow it back, secretly even jeering at Su Xing's stupidity. A galaxy early-stage cultivator receiving her divine intent practically was bringing about his own destruction. But after several breaths, Demi-King Ponzi suddenly sensed the opponent's divine intent was abnormally powerful. Although her own trained mind was not strong, she was supercluster stage after all. Nevertheless, she had not expected she would be like an ant in front of the opponent. A Star Master! Demi-King Ponzi was shocked. She immediately could recall contracted Star Masters possessed star nests, and these star nests were capable of powerful divine intents. "Why do you not kill her?" Wu Xiao was confused. "We still need her to guide us to the Jade Alum Palace." Su Xing replied. "How do you have this type of immemorial secret treasure?" Demi-King Ponzi hatefully glared at Su Xing. Su Xing flashed the god's sealing plate, and Demi-King Ponzi immediately became respectful, not daring to vent herself any longer. If the mind inside the god's sealing plate was destroyed, she would also more or less die. No nonsense. Inform me that Lady Snake Scorpion still has the Jade Alum Palace's 10,000-year goo. Su Xing coldly said, an evil smile spreading across his lips. If you obediently cooperate, I will not make this difficult for you. If you harbor ulterior motives, then do not blame me. Yes. Demi-King Ponzi eagerly agreed. 10 years ago, Lady Snake Scorpion began to design the 5 Poisons Mountain Forbid Dance. The 6th poison after the 5 poisons, the Gecko Cliff, was a gigantic natural moat. The cliff was 103 high, glossy as a mirror. The 4 great demi-kings and the thousands of 5 poison demi-soldiers all stood guard again and again. If it was exchanged for one allowing riding sword flight, this Gecko Cliff naturally could be ignored, but after the 5 Poisons Mountain Forbid Dance, to scale it was simply a dream. Furthermore, 5 Poisons Mountain's final Forbid Dance was in this cliff. Indeed, it sounded amazing, but Lady Snake Scorpion had one point that she nevertheless did not think of. That was that a Super Void cultivator would have designs on her. Super Void cultivators could use their power of heaven and earth to urge on Super Void flight. Already, they had no need for flying swords, and after passing the 5 poisons, the Gecko Cliff's poison mist and magic miasma would already have more or less vanished into thin air. After all, demi-kings and demi-soldiers could not possibly guard within the poison cloud. So by the time Su Xing rushed to Gecko Cliff, the scene had become a tussle of the Super Void cultivator envious of the East going to break the Gecko Pillar, and Lady Snake Scorpion assigning someone to go obstruct and kill him. The Rock Demon King has not come yet. This Lady Snake Scorpion honestly is arrogant. On a remote trail, Su Xing watched the several thousand-meter gecko cliff. Already, he spotted Envious of the East and the other ancestors. Seeing Envious of the East soaring in the air, the imposing air of a single flip of the wrist annihilating several hundred demi-soldiers certainly was stunning. Pensier hooked a sneer onto her lips. Su Xing felt her expression had a trick. Could it be that she has a killing move? What Su Xing could think of was the Lady Snake Scorpion Xie twin star generals, but standing off in the face of a supercluster cultivator was a praying mantis stopping a cart, overestimating their capabilities. Master, although the Rock Demon King did not come, there is still Zhongqi. Zhongqi? A demi-king? Demi-kings had always respected strong. Since Su Xing could restrain her, Pensier actually very quickly fell into the slave-servant role. She replied, "How would slave-servant know? She only knows the Rock Demon King is but extremely deferential towards this Zhongqi. Slave-servant only knows he is from the White Tiger territory." The White Tiger territory? This time, it was Wu Xiao that could not help but raise her brows. The White Tiger territory was Liangshan continent's most mysterious as well as most dangerous place. That place was a vast trillion li, rich in demon beasts. The Azure Dragon territory, Vermilion Bird territory and the Black Turtle territory's demon beasts were not very common to see, but the White Tiger territory's demon beasts honestly were too numerous to count. Often, there would be cultivator teams formed to go treasure hunt in the White Tiger territory, but that place was in extreme lack of spiritual influences. 7th and 8th rank demon beasts could be seen anywhere that encounters were practically slaughters. Surviving cultivators' rumors added more terror to the White Tiger territory, thus everyone believed the White Tiger territory was the habitat of wasteland beasts from the prehistoric era. Those that dared go could be counted on the fingers. However, it was said that if one could walk out of the White Tiger territory's 8 wastelands and 1,000 ancients, he could arrive at the legendary Star World. Star World was a myth of Liangshan continents. The heavenly 108 stars were believed to have descended from Star World. It could be clearly seen that they were incredible. Hearing Pensier say this, Su Xing felt some disbelief. Could it be that man descended from Star World? Thinking of this, the two then halted their pace, gazing far into the distance. A man in the sky covered with a yellow robe leisurely descended. Seeing his legs stand on empty space, without a sword, that was shockingly the characteristic of a supervoid cultivator. Xian Zhenzi, Ancestor Longevity and the other ancestors showed shock when they saw this. They absolutely did not expect that besides the Rock Demon King, they also could see a supervoid cultivator. Envious of the East coldly snorted, soaring high into the air until he stood chest to chest with that yellow-robed man. "Your servant is Zhongqi. The queen has some matters and is far unable to welcome you, having your servant come receive her guests. Ladies and gentlemen of the Azure Dragon territory who have turned up uninvited, your servant now asks that you quickly return." Zhongqi opened his mouth to speak, that face cold as a boulder, without emotion, but his tone nevertheless had a sort of invisible pressure squeezing everyone present. The supercluster ancestors all were pale in the face, not daring to breathe, and the galaxy cultivators had already fallen to the ground, paralyzed. Let alone that supervoid cultivation was only a realm higher than supercluster, this simply was a fundamental leap. Supercluster cultivators only turned the star energy in their bodies from a river into a sea, making star energy evidently seem more resounding and powerful, but it was at supervoid stage that it would make the body's star energy completely dissolve into a whole with one's body. The body's star energy would then become nothingness, just like the starry skies above. From the perspective of any cultivators with weak willpower, a supervoid cultivator every word and action was comparable to a magic weapon. Lady Snake Scorpion is truly formidable. Does she even have a character of your level serving her, sire? Envious of the East laughed aloud, releasing an imposing air. Gecko Cliff's demi-kings and demi-soldiers each were drenched in sweat, stepping back 3 cheech. The grandeur of the 2 supervoid cultivators secretly crossed swords, their spiritual mights bearing down on the other, matchlessly tyrannical that the others simply were unable to get involved. What is the background of this Zhongqi? Never heard of him. Xianjinzi's tone was grim. Envious of the East, we had best quickly destroy the Forbiddance, otherwise the moment the Rock Demon King comes, we certainly will be unable to escape. The Red Lotus Fairy coldly smiled. The Rock Demon King's giant rock spreads its wings and flies 90,000 li was of extreme speed. To think of escape was to dream. Envious of the East also knew things were grave. Although the opponent was also a super void cultivator, his own side also had 4 supercluster ancestors, after all. Each had extraordinary abilities, and if they truly battled, Envious of the East was not afraid. If fellow Zhongqi wishes to obstruct us, then Envious is much obliged. Envious of the East then made a move, and more than 100 flying swords appeared around his body. These flying swords formed a sword array that shot towards Zhongqi with a whoosh. A super void cultivator's sword chant was not at all ordinary as expected. Just when Envious of the East acted, the Su Xing several thousand meters away could sense a sort of churning feeling in his stomach. Those 100 flying swords practically was just like a galaxy hanging upside down and pouring as a torrent. This sort of terrifying imposing aura was not achievable even if Su Xing used the miraculous Bodhi tree. Zhongqi raised his yellow robes, and he flashed yellow from head to foot. Immediately, the entire sky flooded with yellow light. Dark yellow rays instantly swelled violently, spreading in all directions frantically in a quick expansion. Instantly, Gecko Cliff was enveloped by the yellow light. Envious of the East turned the imposing air of his flying swords scalding, successively attacking this shrouded Gecko Cliff. Envious of the East stared at Zhongqi, not daring to be careless. After Zhongqi's face showed an abnormal expression, his figure flashed and disappeared in the light barrier without a trace. When they saw this situation, everyone naturally knew that Zhongqi made his move. Each fully used their abilities. That Xianjinzi greatly released the green light on his body, then shouting his long robes floated, and the originally settled mist began to surge. Like before, another more than 100 flying swords brandished their fangs as they pounced towards the sky. Unexpectedly, they could resist that madly expanding yellow light for a time without falling. When Ancestor Longevity, Queen Lady of Ice and the Red Lotus Fairy saw this, they at once did not hesitate in the slightest. Each enshrouded themselves with a multicolored barrier. Ancestor Longevity's 99 Rebirth Swords, 2. The Queen Lady of Ice's Ice Spirit Snow Soul Swords, 3. And the Red Lotus Fairy's Red Lotus Karma Fire Swords made a beeline to attack the yellow light. Besides flying swords and abilities, the supercluster cultivators alternated magic weapons. Zhongqi's yellow light was just like the canopy of heaven pressing down on them. Everyone did not dare easily let his yellow light pressure them. When these supercluster cultivators used their flying swords, bright and multicolored sword lights twisted without stop under the yellow canopy. That yellow covering was just like a quagmire, for the supercluster cultivators' flying swords were abnormally challenged. Only Envious of the East's primordial boundless swords broke the light like a shuttle, and under the force of their flying swords, Zhongqi had been forced to reveal his figure. Envious of the East patted his astral bag, taking out a treasure mirror of purple light. It released an oddly thick pillar of multicolored light. Unexpectedly, it instantly flooded open the light screen in front of them, hardly hesitating to cover Zhongqi. Zhongqi's pupils glowed, and his yellow robes fluttered. The yellow light canopy immediately burst out and released a dazzling ray of light that poured down in torrents to cover everyone within. Those galaxy stage cultivators let out screams the instant the yellow light touched them. Without the least bit of capability to resist, their whole bodies were burned into ghastly skeletons by a sort of yellow fire. The other supercluster ancestors were greatly astonished, however, they were sect founders. Naturally, they had the means to protect their lives. At once, all of the supercluster cultivators gathered in the middle back-to-back, forming a plum blossom-shaped defensive array. Afterwards, they each took out their own defensive treasures, becoming a ball of divine light that flickered incessantly. Unexpectedly, they had instantly spread no less than 5 or 6 layers of concentrated barriers. This is the Golden Crow's divine flame. 6. Envious of the East, hurry and kill him. The ancestors anxiously shouted one after another. These sect ancestral masters that could discern that this yellow light's origins unexpectedly were of the Golden Crow's divine flame immediately lost the color in their faces. The Golden Crow's divine flame was an immemorial legendary flame that the three-legged Golden Crow had once spat out. Its might was shocking, able to burn the sky and ruin the earth. Seeing that their opponent unexpectedly used the Golden Crow's divine flame to forge an enormous light barrier was a trick unprecedented in the Azure Dragon territory. Envious of the East wrinkled his brow. Green light flashed, and a layer of green divine light protected him within. Then he raised his hand, flicking his fingers at the light canopy. 100 green sword chi about a zhang in length crisscrossed and violently shot forth, breaking the yellow light canopy without any difficulty. Zhong Qi sneered. His arms suddenly moved, and countless talons of Golden Crow's divine flame produced a cheech sound that broke the air as they surrounded Envious of the East. Envious of the East explosively shouted, and the divine light greatly swelled. His figure forged towards the talons, a grim expression flashing across his face. One arm clashed with the talons and easily danced. Immediately, it was even more intensive than the Golden Crow's divine flame talons. A dark green ray with an even sharper air-splitting noise erupted in front of Zhong Qi. Both sides slightly touched. Envious of the East's sword light easily ripped apart the Golden Crow's talon shadows, and also flicking, the flying swords became a light and shadow that attacked Zhong Qi. Zhong Qi's expression moved, and the flying swords exploded in front of him. A formless light screen blocked Envious of the East's sword chant. Go! Zhong Qi lightly pointed at Envious of the East. That yellow light canopy enshrouding 1,000 meters suddenly compressed violently towards Envious of the East. Envious of the East's layers of barriers suddenly burned, the speed at which every single layer broke clearly visible to the naked eye. Can you only use the Golden Crow's divine flame? Envious of the East expressionlessly said. And what about it? Zhong Qi calmly said. A yellow light flashed across his eyes, and the yellow light transformed. Envious of the East's flying swords were immediately broken. Then you can just prepare to die at this place? Envious of the East shouted. A block of jade floated above his head, and pinching together hand seals, a spiritual pressure suddenly discharged. His hands formed seals, and his divine sense at the same time connected to all of the flying swords, suddenly initiating the sword array of a sword chant. A shocking scene appeared. Countless threads of green light flashed eerie green rays, intermittently appearing all around. Their flickering was silent, completely lacking a pattern, as they slowly closed in on the center, trapping Zhong Qi within. Zhong Qi's face turned grim. Only at this time did he realize that he was caught in the opponent's trap, unexpectedly falling into the middle of a sword array. His shock was brief, and he waved his hands. Several bursts of Golden Crow's divine flame became Golden Crow saber rays that crisscrossed and shot out, slashing straight towards the place Envious of the East was at. After several thousand green sword threads simultaneously appeared and flashed consecutively several times, the Golden Crow's divine light instantly had been cut into countless pieces, becoming specks of divine light, disappearing without a trace. Zhong Qi was stunned, showing a grave expression. Immediately afterwards, he coldly grunted. His forehead overflowed with cold sweat, and the 1,000 meters Golden Crow's light canopy concentrated to a single point, becoming a supernatural bird that emerged, the immemorial three-legged Golden Crow. The three-legged Golden Crow's 3 legs aimed at a single direction exceptionally slowly and scratched. Light and flame dazzled the eyes, and the entire gecko cliff collapsed and disintegrated, tottering on the edge of complete destruction. The imposing air of the two supervoid cultivators' confrontation was truly terrifying. The three-legged Golden Crow consecutively slashed several green strands, firing off at several dozens of zhang away. The result was that a densely packed sword light appeared in front of him. After it had been broken several chi, the three-legged Golden Crow finally greatly reduced its flame and howled in grief as it collapsed. Zhong Qi at last revealed a shocked expression. So amazing! Su Xing actually breathed in. Even if they were separated by several thousand meters, the imposing showdown between the supervoid cultivators seemingly pressed down upon him. The heavens and earth became incomparably heavy. Originally, Su Xing felt he could easily destroy supercluster ancestors, and he even thought that somewhat certain of the supervoid cultivator. This was the first time he had seen a confrontation of supervoid cultivators, and his heart honestly was shocked into a perilous situation. He felt that certainty was practically a joke. Perhaps before he had even acted, Envious of the East could raise a hand and destroy him. A cultivator of this sort of star energy and nothingness of heaven and earth ability actually was too terrifying. Su Xing also roused from his shock. CEO, have you any certainty confronting a supervoid cultivator? Quite possibly. Wu Xiao was not at all like Su Xing, showing that much shock. In the perspective of the harm star, supervoid was indeed powerful, but as long as she possessed the white and black unicorn tiger, so long as she used her dark rank move, in addition to her 3-star destined weapon, she still had a chance in battle. However, killing him was not too likely. Do star generals not originate from Star World? Legend says that past transforming star of annihilation stage, these supervoid cultivators count as nothing. Pensier chuckled. The Vermilion Bird territory was very mystical about the legends of the star generals and naturally were not clear that the star generals needed to grow. Wu Xiao sneered. Let us quickly go to the Jade Alum Palace. Su Xing shook his head. Under Pensier's guidance, Su Xing and Pensier entered a narrow winding road into the Gecko Cliff. This trail was considerably concealed, and only those with a Demi-King's token could pass through. Quite fortunately, Su Xing had obtained a Demi-King token from Demi-King Golden Wings in their prior confrontation. As it happened, it could be used. For the sake of not inadvertently alerting the enemy, Wu Xiao remained outside and did not follow. Watching the supervoid cultivators' confrontation, Wu Xiao seemingly was even more interested. Outside of Five Poisons Mountain, on a nameless peak, a woman with a blue and white long skirt, gently swaying where she stood, currently looked at the far-off Poison Mountain enveloped in toxic gas. Her clear, lake water-like pupils made others unable to fathom her. Elder Sister Qingxi, could it be you still want to go to Five Poisons Mountain with designs on that 10,000-year goo? Behind her, a girl with green hair leaning a wooden staff on her shoulder giggled. Jingji, too, that 10,000-year goo actually is a pretty good creature? Qingxi slightly smiled. So long as Elder Sister desires it, Long Kuei shall go help Elder Sister seize it. Another tall-built, dark-skinned woman spoke. Hearing her words, living goddess of lightning Wang Jingji twitched her lips, muttering, truly a metal bull, nothing but violence and murder. Five Poisons Mountain has the 5 poisons forbid dance. It is simply impossible to go there. Long Kuei did not pay her any attention and treated Wang Jingji as air. Then we wait until the 5 Poisons Mountain's forbid dance break, and then we go. Qingxi's face still hung a relaxed smile as before. Inferior star living goddess of lightning heard an inconceivable thing. How will it break? Right now, the Azure Dragon territory's cultivators should already have passed the 5 poisons and have encountered that golden crow of the White Tiger territory. The forbid dance will soon break. At that time, we will board the astral treasure and go. Qingxi seemed to be speaking of something to be expected, but in Wang Jingji's ears, this sounded unbelievable. The Azure Dragon territory's cultivators were assaulting 5 Poisons Mountain, something that Wang Jingji had not heard of. How are you this certain? Who would not want the 10,000-year goo? What Qingxi understood clearly was even more profound than what Wang Jingji was able to, and she also knew many of Falling Dragon Mountain's secrets. Wang Jingji seemed to understand yet also not. In the end, she no longer felt like thinking. In any case, find a solution yourself, Sister Qingxi. If you are to go to 5 Poisons Mountain, this young woman certainly will not accompany you. Qingxi smiled. Ha! Of all people, a scholarly youth gazed at the divine fire and jade light 1,000 meters away, showing slight surprise. Never expected supervoid cultivators to be this incredible. Just in battle alone, A galaxy cultivator could never draw near. The youth twitched his lips, carrying a green net. If Envious of the East were present, he would definitely be shocked because this youth was none other than the one that had been killed by his slap, Xie Chang'an. However, at this time, Xie Chang'an was alive and well, full of vigor, not at all like a man that had been killed. That oaf Envious of the East definitely would not have thought that Five Poisons Mountain unexpectedly would have other supervoid cultivator besides the Rock Demon King. Xie Chang'an chuckled. His tone had an indescribable resentfulness. Previously, when Envious of the East suddenly struck him, if it was not for his previously swallowing a 9 turns life replenishing pill, to enter a state of fake death, that slap honestly would have been the death of him. If word got out that a Star Master that had contracted a 5 Tiger General had been killed by a smack, that honestly would be the world's best joke. This Highness next time will avenge this slap. Xie Chang'an snorted, brimming with a sort of disdain for supervoid cultivators. A figure emerged from his side. A woman wearing armor appeared, with a cloud bun and the beauty of a flower. Her eyes were very dignified, seemingly a naturally occurring sort of general's might that made other unable to but acknowledge their allegiance. Chang'an, do not speak any more nonsense. Wu Song and her Star Master already have infiltrated the Jade Alum Palace. By the time the supervoid cultivators finish fighting, we will not have a chance. If you wish to take revenge, do so afterwards. The woman was dignified and strict, and her tone had a sort of resolution that could not be resisted. The relationship between a Star Master and Star General was usually that of a master and servant, but this woman nevertheless inverted things, being arrogant and bossy towards her Star Master. Xie Chang'an inevitably nodded. Schwanger, what you said is right. This Highness truly did not expect that the renowned Wu Song unexpectedly would also sign a Star Duel Covenant. If even Lin Chong has signed a contract, what is there surprising about Wu Song signing one as well? Schwanger flatly said. Do you have a chance of success against her? Wu Song still has the white and black unicorn tiger. Xie Chang'an anxiously asked. Perhaps Su Xing would not have thought that during the time he and Wu Xiao walked a remote path that they would be discovered by the Xie Chang'an who had been faking his death. He felt that something was odd, so he followed Su Xing and Wu Xiao, discovering their secret. Seeing the two battle, from the bottom of his heart, he thought Wu Xiao was Su Xing's Star General. Your servant will stall Wu Song. You infiltrate the Jade Alum Palace. Your opponent is only Galaxy early stage, so you must not let your servant be disappointed. Schwanger warned, if you actually encounter danger, then flee. Your servant shall not blame you. Xie Chang'an laughed heartily, and how could Chang'an ever let Schwanger be disappointed? Do not be too full of talk. Do you think the man that could make Wu Song sign a contract would be ordinary? Schwanger looked askance at him. Harm Star Wu Song's star position in the previous generation was Overlord of the Star Duels. This generation's was under the halo of the last one's. According to the Harm Star style, she could not possibly sign a contract, but on the contrary, that pilgrim Wu Song had an intimate relationship with a man. If that man were said to have no extraordinary aspects, Xie Chang'an himself was unwilling to believe so. However, Xie Chang'an was not afraid. His Star General similarly had importance and fame not at all inferior to Wu Song's, and to be able to strike her fancy, Xie Chang'an had quite the amount of assets. He was the prince of the Azure Dragon Territory's Cold Tang Kingdom. 5. Although the Cold Tang Kingdom was not worth comparison to the Great Liang Dynasty, the entire nation of the Cold Tang Kingdom had secretly prepared and saved for the Star Duels for a very long time. As a small kingdom, their greatest aspect was their anonymity. They were far unlike the Great Liang, the Most High Path and other large kingdoms and sects, each and every one of their moves being curbed. This also gave Xie Chang'an a very big chance. After the start of the first phase, heavenly and earthly stars, when the other star generals began to move for 1 star, he already enough capital to allow a Star General to promote to 2 star. Then your servant will go see that Wu Song. Wu Xiao stood atop a knoll gazing at the far-off rays of light in the horizon. She saw the yellow-robed man Zhong Qi fling his robes, his entire body transforming into an enormous 2-legged golden crow. He burned Gecko Hill into a fire beacon reaching the sky. Those demi-kings and demi-soldiers had not yet mobilized before they were burnt to ash by Zhongqi. So it turned out that the Golden Crow transformed into a man's true spirit. No wonder it is so tyrannical. Wu Xiao looked pensively. Demon beasts were everywhere in the White Tiger territory. Some of them refining into people was not news, but compared to the Vermilion Bird territory's demi-kings, they were even more worthy of the word demonic. 6. Demon beasts transformed into human shape became true spirits, possessing their own life caste powers cultivators could not match. The immemorial Golden Crow was a legend that had 3 legs. However, Zhongqi's transformation with 2 seemed to not have reached completion. However, the White Tiger territory's true spirit running to the Vermilion Bird territory and subordinating himself to Lady Snake Scorpion made Wu Xiao somewhat confused. The white and black unicorn tiger beside her roared, as if its will to fight was stirred by the 2-legged Golden Crow. Suddenly at this time, the white and black unicorn tiger turned its head, making a gloomy roar, its eyes shooting a chill. Wu Xiao stroked the white and black unicorn tiger, hinting at it to be calm. Then, she indifferently said, "Why does whichever little sister not come out for a look? Worthy of the name White and Black Unicorn Tiger. Truly, it makes your servant completely lack the opportunity for a sneak attack." A laugh full of daring resounded. Shuanga walked onto the hill. Wu Xiao looked at her. Slight rays of light appeared in her eyes, and casting a glance at her, she flatly said, "Little sister allows her star master to go rush into the Jade Alum Palace alone. Is that good? Little sister? Little sister Wusong, this address is certainly wrong." Shuanger's tone was completely imposing. Her arms shook, and 2 long whips, 7, appeared from her wrists. These whips were segmented like bamboo, soft and limpid. The entire body of the whip in her left hand was a light gold, brimming with a simple and elegant air. The whip in her right hand was like snow and frost, emitting a depressing chilliness. The 2 kinds of completely contrasting imposing airs nevertheless was an abnormal mixture. Wind and moon unmatched. Wu Xiao was stunned. Su Xing at this moment was currently following along with Pensier through spiraling bluestone platforms going upwards. Every step was towards a higher place, and his face was full of a flabbergasted expression. Due to the great battle between the Supervoid cultivators, the entire Jade Alum Palace was already deserted, all of the people inside drawn away. With Demi-King Pensier at hand, not even the slightest hair obstructed them. They had not entered the Jade Alum Palace's winding corridor for long, when he found step after step of unending bluestone staircase. He walked enough that after he took a break, he still had not reached any sign of the end. Su Xing's curiosity was greatly aroused. Was the Jade Alum Palace unexpectedly constructed at such a high place? Embracing the doubt in his heart, Su Xing calmed his heart and followed the steps, calmly clambering up little by little. Where is that 10,000-year gu at? Slave servant does not know. The queen constructed 5 gu halls at 5 Poisons Valley, and among them one has the 10,000-year gu. The other 4 are all death traps. The queen was also anxious someone would spy on her that she would pretend to have puzzles. Pensier alluringly replied. Her eyes rolled around wildly, darting around, as if she was thinking of something. For master to have designs on the 10,000-year gu, slave servant, but feels that is completely unsensible. Pensier covered her mouth and chuckled. How so? Su Xing was not inclined to comment. Pensier said, to control the 10,000-year gu, if you are not one of illustrious powers, then you would need superb gu control arts. Those Azure Dragon territory cultivators do not know whose spell they are receiving, yet they unexpectedly wish to control the 10,000-year gu. Truly, they are dreaming. Even if the queen does not obtain it, do not think that others can obtain it. I am free to follow propriety, no need to be talkative. Su Xing coldly glanced at her, hardly speaking. Pensier thought that Su Xing was obstinately persisting in error or that he was counting on something. However, thinking that Su Xing could rely on galaxy early-stage cultivation to control her, that power indeed was formidable. It could not be said for certain that he perhaps had some trump card. This Star Master truly was unbelievable. Could it be he was a character of that legendary transforming star of annihilation grade? Continuing on upwards approximately more than another 100 zhang, after the twists and turns of the bluestone steps, the two finally spotted a large door at the end of these long bluestone stairs. Immediately his vigor rose, and Su Xing quickened his pace. After he turned past a corner, an ordinary square-shaped exit was before him. Following the exit out, he indistinctly gazed out. The scene outside made Su Xing's expression change. The Jade Alum Palace was constructed grandly and abundantly beautiful. Its 4 ramparts blazed with light. Entering the main hall, which nevertheless was quite uncharacteristic, with dark yellow skies and gray fog. Although the palace's grandeur was still discernible, it still was sprinkled with an indistinct sort of overcast and unclear appearance. Past those dark and gloomy light rays, Su Xing saw this hall's decorations were abnormally strange. Countless spider designs were drawn on the walls, the thin lines wandering all over the ramparts, from the ceiling straight to the floor. In particular were the eyes of the spider designs, a green that was like day and night, a red that was completely bloody, a purple that was wise, and a black that was deep as a pool. At first glance, it was full of a chilly intent. This place is? Su Xing did not bat an eye. Panzer smiled. Master, this place is Pansi Hall, one of the 5 poisons palaces that the Jade Alum Palace established. That Gu Hall is under one of the halls. Slave servant is Demi-King Pansi and can only bring master to Pansi Hall without obstruction. Slave servant also asks master to not regard her as an outsider. Su Xing sized up Pansi Hall and nodded. Then you know how to reach the other 4 halls? The other 4 halls are interlinked. To find one, slave servant fears will require a lot of time. However, slave servant has a way. Master, please enter slave servant's chambers. Pansi alluringly smiled, speaking with an endlessly amorous sort of tone. Su Xing nodded, walking inside with great strides. There were dark and gloomy gases rising spirals, like mist and smoke, yet not at all toxic. However, it concealed the main hall very well. What cultivation method do you practice in the main hall? This fog appears not too ordinary. Su Xing played with a plume of mist as he spoke. Slave servant has always cultivated the 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web in Pansi Hall. Pansier delicately walked to a book cabinet, hanging an odd smile. Just at this time, Pansi Hall's mist abruptly rolled towards Su Xing like it had substance. Then, these mists transformed into the 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web as it completely wrapped up Su Xing's 4 limbs. In the center of the main hall, an array point activated, and the spiders on the walls also spat a myriad of spider silk, trapping Pansi Hall with the webs. A crack was practically invisible. Pansier, what are you doing? Su Xing's voice sunk. Panzer burst out in laughter, and an out-of-character viciousness rose. Master, you truly were not careful, unexpectedly daring to abandon your star general and step into the Pansi main hall with slave servant. This place's Pansi array can trap divine intent. Now, your god's sealing plate must be unusable. Su Xing moved his arms and legs. As expected, the Pansi array was powerful, completely trapping his body. Even his divine intent had seemingly been struck onto the web and was incapable of moving. A chill emerged in Pansier's eyes. A tiny galaxy cultivator unexpectedly dares to control this king, truly reckless. Today, Pansier shall properly serve master. Pansier's lips formed a hook. The multitude of spider webs seemingly dissolved through her body, unexpectedly not hindering her in the slightest. An enticing charm was hung in Pansier's eyes. Her steps were like flowers, graceful and elegant. At the same time, she removed that tiny bodice, and her perfectly round jade breasts bounced out. That bright red was gentle and plump. Pansier's upper body was completely naked. Master, please properly offer your essence energy to slave servant. Slave servant shall let master experience ecstasy even at death's door. You truly brought about your own end. Su Xing coldly looked at Pensier, somewhat with pity, somewhat with disapproval. Pensier's alluring looks immediately cooled. Falling into slave servants' pensiere can be compared to a butterfly falling into a spider web. Your final struggles are useless. The one who brought about his own end is you. Su Xing's eyes somewhat showed a bone-chilling cold intent, as if he was sneering at her betrayal. Pensier was very puzzled. Could it be that he was counting on the Star General's help? But that Wu Xiao had been stopped outside the Jade Alum Palace and was basically incapable of entering. Wait, Pensier suddenly recalled a fact. Star Masters and Star Generals that signed a contract could enter the Star Nest. If Wu Xiao had wanted to enter the Jade Alum Palace, she would only need to enter the Star Nest to do so. Pensier's heart shivered. As if for the sake of verifying her thinking, a brief earth-shattering whistle sounded from her back. The speed was extremely quick, and when Pensier heard this sound, she had no way of dodging. Her back suffered a punch, and her bones shattered. Pensier screamed, nearly fainting. Pensier deserved to be called a demi-king, for when she staggered forwards, she continuously urged her magic energy. A lump of spider silk promptly rolled out like a wave. The person that attacked from her back was like a phantom death god. Pensier only saw two clumps of lights, one cold and one hot, circulating upon the opponent's face and directly break the spider silk. Her palm chops fell, and Pensier's shoulder blades were immediately chopped apart like wooden logs. Pensier screamed in pain, but she overall could be considered to have rapidly returned to her senses. She dodged the serial attacks. A Star General? Pensier looked at the woman in front of her and shouted in disbelief. The newcomer wore a maid dress, revealing a stretch of her snowy back and thighs. Her shoulders had a dark red tattoo. Her head wore a flower crown, and her eyes were like vermilion. Her right hand was in front while her left hand was behind in a cold and detached killing posture. In particular were those fists adorned in yin and yang, with two fishes circulating, and two stars each shined. How could you appear here? Pensier shouted. Betrayal of master cannot be forgiven. Each word of the maid brimmed with an ice-cold deadly assertion. She was Yen Yizhen. Pensier only felt as if she had fallen into an icehouse, her entire body cold to the extreme. You dare to be impudent before the Pensiere. 1,000 layers, 10,000 calamities web. Pensier yelled in fury. She opened her mouth and spat out a white spider web. Yen Yizhen's figure flashed, like an afterimage flitting across water waves. She easily sidestepped Pensier's 1,000 layers, 10,000 calamities spider silk. Once again, Yen Yizhen drew close to Pensier. Pensier's terrifying spider web seemingly bundled up tight. This time, it was nevertheless broken through easily by Yen Yizhen. The skillful star wanderer Yen Qing's body was like a butterfly raising a death cloud of dust, flashing past the spider web's encirclement. By the time Pensier returned to her senses, Yen Yizhen had already grasped her arm with one hand and was already violently pummeling her with the other. Amidst the ear-piercing bone-fracturing sounds, Yen Yizhen's hands were like they were overturning flowers, continuously flashing across Pensier's body. When the 1,000 layers, 10,000 calamities web had been broken, Pensier completely lost her normal evasion response. Yen Yizhen's face from start to finish appeared cold and detached. Her two hands contained immense strength, and under such close-up attacks, Pensier's spider silk had become just like decorations. Her towering breasts had been beaten full of wounds. Without a bit of sympathy, the Yen Yizhen in battle was ice-cold just like a fiend. Through the sounds of continuous strikes, Yen Yizhen continuously moved around her. By the time Pensier finally understood she had to retreat, her mind already did not have sufficient strength to command her body's movements. This was Pensier's first taste of the feeling of fear. She raised her head. Her entire body's internal organs, bones, and meridians had been ripped apart. Whimpering, it seemed she wanted to beg for forgiveness, but following Yen Yizhen snapping her neck behind her, Pensier's lifeless eyes stared blankly at Su Xing. Afterwards, she softly collapsed onto the ground like ooze, and only then did her breath cease. Following Pensier's death, Pansy Hall's magic circle lost its support. The dark and gloomy fog dispersed, and there was only a bleak sight to behold. Master! Yan Yizhen's eyes had slight concern. I'm fine. Su Xing sized up this Ponzi hall. He looked at the Ponzi array in this hall with complete interest. This demi-king Ponzi's spider's silk ability indeed was somewhat outstanding. If it was given to the randomly appearing and disappearing Shi Yuan to use, that actually would be a great trump card. Thinking of this, Su Xing used his divine intent in Ponzi Hall to probe around to see if there was a usable place. A spider web fell into Su Xing's palm. This was Ponzer's 1,000 layers 10,000 calamities web. Storing it away, Su Xing said, "Let's go find Lady Snake Scorpion now. We have to obtain Xiejin's blood as soon as possible." Although the 10,000-year goo was enticing, Su Xing's top priority still was to cure Gongsun Huang of the goo poison. The closer he was to the Xie twins, the Gongsun Huang in the star nest was seemingly weaker. Yan Yizhen nodded, her vermilion pupils a hidden and very deep self-blame. Su Xing knew from a look that Yan Yizhen had sensed the trouble that Lin Yingmei's side had encountered. Perhaps she currently felt guilty she had left without saying goodbye to them. Walking over, he patted her shoulders. His tone was soft and consoling. "No need to blame yourself. With the perfect pair of Yingmei and Xinjie, there won't be any danger." Slave servant understands. Yan Yizhen avoided Su Xing's line of sight. Su Xing carefully contemplated. Demi-King Pensier said that the Gu Hall was among one of the 5 halls of the Jade Alum Palace. Its whereabouts were known only by Lady Snake Scorpion alone. Going and searching each one clearly was too late, and according to the safest psychological actions of someone alone, everyone liked to put unknown dangers under their control in order to feel relief. Su Xing roughly guessed that such a careful person as Lady Snake Scorpion could not possibly place the 10,000-year goo in the imperial halls the other demi-kings cultivated in. In this case, although the Jade Alum Palace was very big, there was only one sort of possibility. It was Lady Snake Scorpion's imperial palace, Twin Stars Pavilion. Capturing several maids, he very easily found out the position of Lady Snake Scorpion's imperial hall. Very quickly, he stood on a white jade bridge approximately 10 zhang seemingly floating without support high in the air. This bridge was exceptionally exquisite. Engraved with dragons and drawn with phoenixes, it led to a hexagonal building. This building had a height of more than 30 zhang, level piled upon level. Its whole body was constructed from carved jade. It sparkled, appearing to be like an immortal's palace. Furthermore, above the pavilion's entrance, a golden approximately zhang-sized board was hung. Upon it was written 3 large ancient characters, Twin Stars Pavilion. This was the pavilion that got its name from Lady Snake Scorpion contracting the twin stars. When Su Xing stepped onto the jade bridge, he attentively looked over the building from time to time. Although this pavilion was not large, the inside emitted an astonishing spiritual influence that fluctuated incomprehensibly. Furthermore, there was a layer of faint white fluorescence that enveloped the pavilion within. It seemed this place had also been arranged with an extremely formidably forbid dance array. Seeing this, Su Xing was even more convinced that Lady Snake Scorpion was at this place. He brought out the miraculous Bodhi tree and swiped. Its divine light rippled, and the white luster broke apart. Su Xing and Little E seized the chance and hesitated no longer as their figures leapt forwards, penetrating the light screen and entering the Twin Stars Pavilion. Before them was a several hundred square meters imperial palace, with row upon row of approximately 1 zhang high circular jade platforms piled up. The sizes of these jade platforms differed, sparkling white because of the fine jade they were made from. These jade platforms had every sort of refined household utensil placed upon them. These utensils emitted black, red, and purple gases that were discernible as highly toxic from just a look. On one path of the imperial palace was a magnificent screen of a snake and scorpion. There was also a hazy hanging screen with tassels. Indistinctly, he could see a large bed that was beautifully decorated and was considerably luxurious. His divine intent lightly explored, but it was plainly visible that not a single person was in the Twin Stars Pavilion. Su Xing pulled aside the tasseled curtain. The bedding on the bed had been neatly made. Looking at the circular bed, he did not find any place that was odd. Master, might it not be here? Yan Yizhen looked at the absolutely empty Twin Stars pavilion and knit her brow. Those maids said that once Lady Snake Scorpion entered the Twin Stars pavilion, she did not show herself again. Su Xing muttered to himself. Looking up and down the Twin Stars pavilion, according to Lady Snake Scorpion's cautious nature, she probably constructed a secret mechanism in the room. After scouring around, Su Xing retracted his gaze to follow those rows of jade platforms and slowly walked over. Skimming over the decorations upon the jade platforms, he tried to see whether or not he could find anything. Generally speaking, if there was a mechanism, porcelain, decorations and the like were the most suspect. 2. Yan Yizhen also looked around the Twin Stars pavilion. A short while later, Su Xing had not found the entrance to any secret passage but actually found a few scrolls about the 5 poisons for bid dance. Inside was recorded in detail how Lady Snake Scorpion exploited the 5 Poisons Mountains geography to construct an unprecedented forbid dance. It made Su Xing, who looked at it, unable to help but sigh that she truly was a genius. However, the 5 Poisons Mountain was about to be broken, and Su Xing did not have too great an interest. Master! Little E inside the room suddenly called out. What did you find? Su Xing walked in. Yan Yizhen looked at that fragrant bed of the Lady Snake Scorpions, then pressed a chrysanthemum flower, revealing a secret passage. Su Xing blushed in shame. He had actually made things out to be too complicated and had never thought the mechanism would be this simple. The Twin Stars pavilion suddenly rocked violently. Passing through the window, Su Xing clearly saw that the 5 Poisons Mountains poison fog was rapidly diluting like it had been washed away by rain. His heart immediately shivered, for the Super Void Cultivator's battle honestly was world-shaking. The 5 Poisons Mountains final Gecko Cliff Array point should already have broken. At this time, 5 Poisons Mountain was comparable to a cake that had lost its cover. Those founders definitely would fly over like houseflies. Su Xing was too late to go care how the Super Void Cultivator's battle progressed. He called out to Yan Yizhen and went down that secret passageway. I wonder how CEO is doing, Su Xing muttered to himself. When he was this concerned about Harm's star pilgrim Wu Song, those supercluster cultivators were also unable to deal with her. Shaking his head, Su Xing followed Yan Yizhen down. Su Xing absolutely would not have thought that the enemy Wu Xiao at this time would be far more frightening than a supercluster cultivator by several levels. The 2 whips of completely different imposing auras condensed the same sort of baleful aura. Even if the Liangshan continent's most clever viper was only so, the whips swung over with a whiz, flying up and down together. Wu Xiao's double-headed sword blocked back and forth, but the long whip struck with an air-shattering force. The sharp clashing sounds directly made Wu Xiao's attacks result in failure. The wind and moon unmatched whips. 3. Unexpected. Unexpected. Wu Xiao's left hand wiped her cheek, a trace of blood appearing on her snow-white skin, but this did not make Wu Xiao feel dismayed at all. On the contrary, she showed a kind of excitement, a kind of bloodthirsty excitement. Unexpectedly encountering Huinjua. That dignified woman in front of her astonishingly was the ranked 8th prestige star, the Huinjua Huyan Shuang. 5 of the named double clubs. Huyan Shuang's brows carried a general's manner. Her arms trembled, and the wind and moon unmatched whips in one hand drew out windflower while the other swung snow moon. 3 stars circulated on the whips, very eye-catching. Your servant had also not expected that Wu Song would be very intimate with a man. Huyan Shuang boldly laughed. What happened with this generation's star duels? Lin Chong signed a contract, and even you, Wu Song, seem to have found a soulmate. Wu Xiao disdainfully replied and raised her noble frost demonic lotus as she rushed onwards, with an abundance of spirit and power. Huyan Shuang's hands clutched the whips. She focused all of her body's power to her wrists and crossed the long whips. The swift action jolted out a metallic ringing. Wu Xiao's body slightly lowered, her long sword slashing at Huyan Shuang. Huyan Shuang was but one of Liangshan's 5 tiger generals, and her martial force was comparable to Wu Xiao's. Lightly sliding backwards, that long whip raised a phantom that whipped ahead. 6. The whip's wind light swept across Wu Xiao's cheek, and a strand of hair was unexpectedly lifted by the wind-breaking sound and severed. Double clubs Huyen Shuang acted without the slightest bit of mercy. Although Wu Xiao did not need her to have any sort of pity. Wu Xiao's slash on the contrary erased Huyen Shuang's advance, the thunderbolt of a power that fell short of the ears. Huyen Shuang only felt Wu Xiao's phantoms overlapped, seemingly still where she was, before Wu Xiao was already in front of her. Huyen Shuang's reactions were extremely quick, and her body's center of gravity suddenly lowered. With a somersault high into the sky, it made the noble frost demonic lotus ice-cold sword tip wipe close by her forehead. In the instant she flipped, Huyen Shuang's double whips raised up and down. She seized the chance to directly whip towards Wu Xiao's front, with a lightning flash-like attack. Huyen Shuang's speed was abnormally quick, and Wu Xiao at this time could not react. Slightly tilting her face, she avoided the whips, but the swift and severe wind of the whip's whole bodies slid past Wu Xiao's cheeks. That previous faint blood line darkened a bit, unexpectedly flogging the same part, frighteningly accurate. Whistle, spin. The other whip rolled over. Huyen Shuang's double whips could be rated as having reached perfection. The supernaturally finely crafted whips had 9 segments, and their attack range contained several tens of meters. When the whips were moved, one attacked and the other defended, closely linked with one another. If it was any other martial four-star general, if their consciousness faltered even a little, they would have already been whipped into honeycomb by Huyen Shuang's wind and moon unmatched. However, attacking for so long only gave Wu Xiao an insignificant cut and nothing more. Little sister Wu Song still has 2 more bouts. Huyen Shuang nodded, a sort of approving expression. Very good, very good. Wu Xiao was unangered and actually smiled. Her hand grasped noble frost demonic lotus. 5 tiger generals double clubs has not made your servant disappointed. Superb. Wu Xiao's whole body burst with a murderous spirit, unexpectedly forcing Huyen Shuang to nearly retreat. Even if it was so, that murderous aura still made Huyen Shuang blink. She promptly raised the double whips, twisting towards Wu Xiao. Just at this time, a cold light flashed in her eyes. A bang! Wu Xiao grasped the noble frost demonic lotus and forcefully cut the air. A sound just like ice breaking open. A black demonic lotus flower seemingly had been cut down by this empty slash. When the attacking double whips attacked her, it was like they bumped into an incorporeal object and were successively shaken apart. The hill's ground seemingly had an earthquake. A black snow swept by, and long hair flittered. Huyen Shuang was startled, for Wu Xiao unexpectedly attacked to her front. Wherever she passed, the space had black lotuses with her. Yellow rank move. 10 Li demonic lotus dragon slaying. Seeing this, Huyen Shuang also was shocked. She did not dare to be careless, but worthy of being a fierce tiger of rank 8, the double whips violently were drawn back. Wind flower leaf fall. 7. The moment Huyen Shuang moved, it was also her most powerful yellow rank killing move. Her left hand's long whip, its momentum like layer upon layer of immense waves, each superior to the last, smashed the demonic lotuses to pieces. Wu Xiao did not dare have contempt for this. Her swelling sword cheese hurricane broke free of the noble frost demonic lotus and blew towards the long whip, bringing a tidal offensive. 2 immense powers struck each other in the wind with a boom. Explosions continuously rang, and the sword chi was defeated. The wind was continuously drawn open by wind and moon unmatched. Being sliced apart by noble frost demonic lotus, all of the vocabulary of martial force and star energy were twisted by the fickle winds into a thoroughly extreme interpretation. A cultivator only need to be nearby to be shattered by this hurricane when struck and would certainly be heavily wounded. Huyen Shuang's whips were like 2 sharp weapons that continuously hindered Wu Xiao's close combat. A single breath's time? Or perhaps it was even longer, for several hundred moves had followed over in succession. In an instant, a star crest appeared on Huyen Shuang's forehead along with her eyes flashing a star motif. Following the appearance of this phenomenon, Huyen Shuang's imposing air originally equal to Wu Xiao's became sharply more dignified by several times. And strength heavily pressured her. Resonance! Wu Xiao's heart shivered, and the corner of her eye suddenly glanced a youth's figure. The Prestige Star's Star Master unexpectedly did not leave? Huyen Shuang was apparently also somewhat surprised, but the 5 Tiger Generals' reactions were some level of speed. Her hands borrowed power, and the wind and moon unmatched whips leapt high, then swept heavily downwards. Only then did the closely following yellow rank move begin. The whip's power seriously was like rain, falling from the heavens. Yellow rank combo move. Wind flower leaf fall, snow moon without scar. How fierce the yellow rank move under resonance was. If it could be said that Prestige Star Huyen's realm was previously somewhat lower than Wu Xiao's, following resonance, it had explosively swelled. A wind flower leaf fall, snow moon without scars turned snow water into wind, a wind cold as a blade, cutting at Wu Xiao one at a time. Under this sort of unanticipated resonance, Wu Xiao basically was incapable of dodging. If she had been struck, even if she did not die, she could not avoid her vitality being greatly harmed. What a pity! Who Huyen Shuang had bumped into was Wu Xiao, the Overlord Harm's star pilgrim. The white and black unicorn tiger beside her all along did not move, for Wu Xiao originally had planned for a fair contest. However, seeing that the opponent resonated, she was no longer soft-hearted. The white and black unicorn tiger's white shadow scuttled to pounce at the Prestige Star's Star Master. Several of Xie Chang'an's lives were not enough for a 7th-rank spirit beast's attack. Huyen Shuang gnashed her teeth. She shifted her steps to the side, the double whips still changing their attack direction. The whips wind-hunted, thrashing the white and black unicorn tiger into a kitten not daring to draw near. You idiot! Did your servant not have you go to the Jade Alum Palace? What did you come here to do? Prestige Star Huyen Shuang extremely angrily scolded, blocking in front of Xie Chang'an, the double whips assuming an attack stance. Wu Xiao actually did not have the interest to loot a burning house. As far as the proud heavenly stars were concerned, a battle to kill the other side's Star Master to defeat the Star General was simply very tedious, thoroughly boring. That forced attack just now made Wu Xiao somewhat depressed. The star crest on Xue Chang'an's forehead faded, his body frightened into a cold sweat. The harm star Wu Song was more unwavering than he had thought. He had just begun resonance when the white and black unicorn tiger caught on to his presence. Worthy of being called a 7th-rank spirit beast, if it had not been for Huyen Shuang's protection, his throat perhaps would have been bit open on the spot. Seeing that his aid was apparently counterproductive, Xie Chang'an was resentful. This highness also thought to help you, Shuang. That Jade Alum Palace still has a lady snake scorpion inside that is enough for him to handle. This highness does not have any interest in the 10,000-year gu, and the safety of Shuanger is what is most important. In actuality, how would Xie Chang'an not have the mentality to kill Wu Song? Using a Star Master to confront a Star General actually was too good an opportunity. Hearing Xie Chang'an's words, Huyen Shuang did not express anything at all. Her expression did have slight satisfaction, for when Star Master and Star General signed a contract, any Star General would be very pleased to hear their Star Master speak words of steadfast loyalty. It is actually little sister Wu Song's man who honestly lost face. Was it that he abandoned you? Or were you unwilling to follow him? Huyen Shuang showed engrossed gossip. Less nonsense. Wu Xiao rushed forward. Just at this moment, an abnormal quaking came from Gecko Cliff. They caught sight of the faraway poison fog parting, the cliff collapsing, the earth shaking several times. Wu Xiao clearly sensed that the forbid dance had been broken. It seems those cultivators have finally broken the forbid dance? Huyen Shuang arrogantly smiled. Everything bodes ill for your man to go obtain that 10,000-year gu now. Wu Xiao's brows slightly knit together. She wondered whether it was because she heard that phrase, your man, or if it was truly because everything could possibly bode ill for Su Xing that she would show discontent and worry. Huyen Shuang did not truly wish to continue fighting Wu Xiao to the death. Right now, the star duels were only in the second phase, far from reaching the time of life and death. Besides, her own white pig of a contractor Xie Chang'an had stupidly ran over to give Wu Song an extra snack. Huyen Shuang knew that further fighting would not yield any good results. After all, Wu Song's star beast, the white and black unicorn tiger at the present stage, was honestly too outside the rules. The Rock Demon King should almost have arrived, and there is also the Lady Snake Scorpion that contracted the Xie twins. Your man's troubles truly are many. Huyen Shuang's voice was heavy as steel. Wu Xiao looked pensively at the prestige star and suddenly hooked on a sneer. Huyen Zhua, what you said is very true. Then your servant shall eradicate a few unnecessary troubles for his sake. Huyen Zhua's gaze lowered, for she heard Wu Xiao's malicious intentions. The harmed star said nothing else and immediately launched an attack. As if your servant fears you. Huyen Shuang was also angered. Her double whips flew, rolling out wind and waves cold as moonlight. The flexible whips wrapped around the noble frost demonic lotus. Wu Xiao spun the sword, rubbing aside the flexible whips. The white and black unicorn tiger at this time followed Wu Xiao and similarly pounced. The harmed star was already clear that she would make this trouble of a Xie Chang'an leave from Five Poisons Mountain. Arrogant. The prestige star was dignified and impressive. Her right hand trembled, and that whip shook. It had been seemingly frozen, and the whip directly transformed into a solid club, forging on towards Wu Xiao. A watermill club, and the other was still the windflower whip. Huyen Shuang knew that to simultaneously restrict both Wu Xiao and the white and black unicorn tiger, she could only engage in a two-front battle. She used the club to clash together with Wu Xiao's close combat double-headed sword, and that long whip was incessantly sweeping with dazzling efficacy, restricting the white and black unicorn tiger to stay away from Xie Chang'an's safe zone. In addition, Xie Chang'an already found it hard to believe they could proceed, brazenly activating resonance. The two's matching rapport forced Wu Xiao to have a new level of respect for them. When the metallic weapons rang, Wu Xiao's sword edge and Huyen Shuang's wind and moon unmatched slamming into each other gave rise to enormous attacks that were cold enough the entire area shivered, and the fog wildly dispersed. Wu Xiao pulled her sword, her figure moved, and the airflow on the sword's edge condensed into a sharp swordlight, ripping apart the air. A burst of air distortion. Regardless of whether it was speed, angle, power as well as determination, everything was perfect without exception. This slash was incomparably perfect. The Prestige Stars Club was like a blade, also flawless. Under her Star Master's resonance, Huyen Shuang's realm in martial force and star energy swelled. The sword light was disintegrated by her, as if it was fading light. When it appeared, it was dazzling. The club already struck towards Wu Xiao, easily breaking open her slash. Wu Xiao raised the sword to block this incoming attack. Hey! The noble frost demonic lotus trajectory suddenly changed, and Wu Xiao's easily linked several steps to approach in front of Huyen Shuang's eyes. With a sparkle that broke the air, she violently stabbed. Not badly done, but it ends here. Wu Xiao lightly praised. Arrogant. Huyen Shuang's momentum was great, displaying a tyrannical and powerful whip technique. Both sides bent, with everything going her way. In the blink of an eye, they consecutively had 50 bouts. Huyen Shuang already was retreating, having been met with a dead end. One person handling Wu Xiao and the white and black unicorn tiger practically was her limit. A ringing phrase broke free from Wu Xiao's lips. The white and black unicorn tiger's radiance sharply increased. Huyen Shuang's whip technique finally showed a gap, rushed into pieces by the white and black unicorn tiger. Damn! Huyen Shuang glanced at the immobilized Xie Chang'an behind her, immediately pouncing backwards. A silhouette rushed towards her with speed beyond compare. Wu Xiao's noble frost demonic lotus broke an incalculable distance, striking open a line. The sword shadow on the ground suddenly lengthened. When she spotted the white and black unicorn tiger about to claw Xie Chang'an, with his current capabilities, that was death without doubt. Huyen Shuang hastily shouted, and the double whips suddenly formed layers of severe winds, no longer caring about the Wu Xiao behind her. Just at this critical moment, The white and black unicorn completely lacked any indication as it suddenly counterattacked against her. The Huyen Shuang that was worried for her contractor did not foresee this sudden change. She was greatly startled, but worthy of her name as a five-tiger, her reactions were extremely quick. Wind and moon unmatched shook, whipping the white and black unicorn tiger when a chilly wind came from her side. Protecting against the white and black unicorn tiger, she had let Wu Song through. Under the front and rear pincer attack of the 7th-rank spirit beast and Wu Song, the Huyen Shuang who could not handle both at the same time was flustered. Her elbow struck backwards, and Wu Xiao again was greatly outside of her anticipation when she swayed and stepped past Huyen Shuang. Her cloak fell, and the cool and elegant figure already was in front of Xie Chang'an. The sword tip pressed against Xie Chang'an's throat. Huyen Shuang gasped, angrily rushing out. Wu Xiao naturally disdained to kill Xie Chang'an so as to avoid staining the millennial name of the pilgrim. However, this generation's Wu Song was also open-minded, a person that did not bother with trifles. When it was unnecessary, her so-called disdain to kill was merely so. Two choices: die here or leave here. Wu Xiao was expressionless. She knew it was difficult to settle Huyen Shuang in such a short time, so she might as well be blunt in confronting the contractor. Since she had dared to sign with a contractor anyways, she should have prepared for the price. Xie Chang'an stupidly looked at Huyen Shuang. Everything was the responsibility of the latter. The prestige star looked up at the sky and laughed heartily, countering with a question, "May your servant venture to ask for little sister's true name?" "Xiao. Your servant has the single character Shuang. Truly extremely good. The little sister Xiao with a man makes your servant have a whole new level of respect, as expected. For the sake of your man, violating your code is insignificant." Wu Xiao's expression also replied as so. "Good, elder sister wishes to ask one final question." Huyen Shuang said. "Wu Xiao, why would you sign a contract? Your servant does not have any relationship with that man." Wu Xiao's forehead wrinkled. "If little sister Xiao is unwilling to speak, then forget it. This time, Huyen Shuang has lost. If little sister is unwilling to kill that stupid man, next time, your servant will be twice as great." Huyen Shuang very directly spoke. However, this sort of threat completely lacked meaning to Wu Xiao. A genuine star duel always was the sole pursuit of the harmed star pilgrim. Huyen Shuang profoundly glanced at Wu Xiao. Her figure flashed, and she entered the star nest. Xie Chang'an shot a glance at the cool and elegant Xiao. He could not help but be somewhat envious of the man that could obtain her. He secretly cursed himself for indulging in his flights of fancy. Xie Chang'an had no alternative but to use his jade pendant. His figure turned to smoke, and then it dissipated where it was. Wu Xiao let out a sigh. At this time, she saw those founders already waged war at the Jade Alum Palace. Immediately, she straddled the white and black unicorn tiger and flew towards the Jade Alum Palace. The Su Xing walking along the secret passageway did not know at all that Wu Xiao had already beat back a heavenly star that was one of the 5 tigers, prestige star Huyenjua, for the sake of eradicating a bit of trouble for him. At this moment, in this secret passageway he had walked for a long time, he finally saw the end. Su Xing used the oneness of heaven and man to restrain his presence, and Yen Yizhen at this moment also entered the star nest so as to avoid exposing his whereabout. Within the darkness, Su Xing slowly looked over. The end was an expansive and absolutely empty hall, dotted with several cups of dim candles. There were no decorations, but there were several burning fire cauldrons and several sculptures. Within the darkness, there were several indistinct figures. One of them was a lady that wore a luxurious and alluring dress, with her hair tied into a snake and scorpion bun. She probably was the Vermilion Bird Territory's #1 star master, the Lady Snake Scorpion. She currently looked anxiously at a mirror inside her hand. Beside her were 2 others, who were not the Xie twins, for their builds were tall. Their cultivators were all supercluster stage, and one was the Demi-King Golden Wings he had met before. The other was built tall and sturdy, and Su Xing did not know which Demi-clan he was from. He ought to be one of the 2 demi-kings the Lady Snake Scorpion reportedly captured. However, Su Xing went on this trip to obtain Xie Zhen's blood. Could it be that she was in the star nest? Just as he thought this, he suddenly heard a little girl's voice. Elder sister, play fight against scorpions with little Chan. That was the twin-tailed scorpion Xie Bao's voice. Su Xing's heart tightened. A petite silhouette that did not sense him in the slightest walked near him. This little girl possessed an indifference similar to Yen Yizen's, but her eyes were much more gloomy, with a demonic toxic gas from head to foot. Childish. She turned her head, replying with neither sadness nor joy. She was the savage star double-headed serpent Xie Zhen. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.